Ladies and gentlemen, Binnall of America Audio, with your host, Tim Binnall.
Hello out there, my friends. This is Tim Binnall of BinnallofAmerica.com with the second annual BoA Audio Baseball Special. It is March 30th, 2008. We had such a good time last year with the baseball special that we wanted to do it again this year and do it bigger and better than we did the year before. We're bringing back esoteric filmmaker and pundit extraordinaire Paul Kimball, the crackpot historian himself, Adam Gorightly, and one half of the UFO mystics and author of Project Beta, the esteemed Greg Bishop. Plus, we're bringing in two new players for the Festivus. They are, of course, Loren Coleman, the living legend of cryptozoology, and Richard Dolan, the ultra-popular ufologist, both also huge baseball fans. And that's what this episode is all about, my friends, baseball. There's not going to be much esoterica except maybe at the beginning and the end of each interview, what have you been up to and what's coming up next. Those bookend the interviews. But other than that, it's pure baseball talk on just so much different stuff. I couldn't even list it right now. The episode's long enough as it is. You can read the preview on the audio page at BoA. If you're not a big baseball fan, I apologize. Chances are you're not even listening to this. But we'll be back next week with, of course, more off-kilter esoteric discussion. And again, even though they're probably not even listening to the show, the folks who may be outraged that we're doing a baseball special, there's a overarching point to this episode, and that is really that there's life outside of esoterica. We hope you'll join us and enjoy our conversations about America's pastime. No bios for these folks. I'd be here all day reading the bios for all five guests, but you can find their bios via BoA, of course. They've been on the program already numerous times. So without any further ado, let's play ball. These interviews were recorded over the course of the last couple weeks at various dates and times. Big thanks ahead of time to all the great guests who were more than accommodating as far as setting up these little shortcut interviews. To round up all five folks was a bit of a challenge, but thanks to them being so available, we managed to get it together here for the show. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the second annual BoA Audio Baseball Special.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
After a record-breaking 3 appearances last year, our guest here has finally made his return to the program just in time for the second annual BoA Audio Baseball Special. He was kind enough to welcome me up to Canada over the summer, so I think this might be one of the few guests I've met in person, and I consider him a good friend of mine. And he's one of the leading voices in the world of esoterica. He really is a fine esoteric pundit. His opinions usually are scathing and also very thought-provoking. But chances are we're not going to get into that because we're going to be talking about baseball tonight here for the second annual baseball special. Paul Kimball, welcome back to the program.
Thanks a lot, Frank. Oh, sorry, Tim Binnall, my good friend Tim Binnall, of course, right? How could I forget? Yeah.
Oh,
Frank.
What a way to start.
Yeah, busting your chops already. Good to be back on Kimball of Canada. Sorry, that was last year. Binnall of America. Yeah, especially talking about baseball, which is, frankly, far more important than anything in the paranormal world.
Yeah, that seems to be the case lately.
Yeah.
Well, I guess before we dive into the baseball, let's do just a little, what have you been up to in the last year since we talked to you so people can, familiarize yourselves with what you've been up to because they haven't heard from you in a while.
Sure. Last time I would have spoke was just on the radio with you. Would have been when we had just finished Best Evidence. It was the big Best Evidence special that aired. It was critically acclaimed, I'm happy to say, and I just got back from the United States where it picked up an EBE award for Best Historical Documentary. And it worked out really well. I finished in the interim a documentary on classical music for Bravo up here in Canada. And I spent a fair amount of time down in the U.S., particularly in Los Angeles, setting up 2008 and 2009, what's going to be coming. And the things you can look for are more UFO-related documentaries from Red Star and at least one feature film and possibly two. So we're moving into the dramatic area of film and television production.
Awesome. Sounds great. Yeah, we had Greg Bishop on the show in January. He was talking about you coming down there to L.A., so sounds like it's going to be an exciting time for Red Stock.
Yeah, and getting to hang out and work with Greg, who is partnering up with us in Los Angeles, it's been a real pleasure. And there is not a nicer guy in the sort of paranormal universe that I've met than Greg Bishop. So that alone makes it worthwhile. But the fact that we'll actually have business and work, and we'll get to work together, hopefully, and get to work with you and Nick and maybe Mac Tonys as well on that talk show that I wanted to do, which is still in development, but I have every confidence that that's going to go in 2008 as well. More
Awesome.
news on that probably in a couple months.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Now, last year we sort of tried to tie in the paranormal to baseball, but we've kind of beaten that horse, so we're just going to talk baseball this year.
Yeah, I got nothing for you, paranormal and baseball. I got nothing.
Yeah, we ran the well dry as it is last year with that angle. So, and as luck would have it, we had the first ever baseball special, and then lo and behold, the Red Sox win the World Series. So let's hope that this year the luck will keep going.
Excellent.
And when we were setting up the interview, it sounded like you were really chomping at the bit to talk a little bit about the Mitchell report and this whole Clemens thing that happened, of course, in December. Roger Clemens being named in the Mitchell report, and the hearings and all of the crazy saga that's been going on here in the wintertime. So let's hear your opinion of Clemens and the Mitchell report and this latest round of steroid scandals in baseball.
Well, to me, in particular, the Clemens thing is not hurtful, just disappointing, because I grew up, and I'm even older than you are. Clemens was not one of my heroes. I mean, I have different heroes, but in terms of players, he was one of my favorite players. The guy is a bona fide Hall of Famer. He's one of the great pitchers of all time. And when I was younger, he was just coming up with the Red Sox, and I sort of maybe turned away from him when he went to Toronto and New York. But I remember him as this ace for Boston back in the 80s. So to hear his name linked to steroid abuse was terribly disappointing if you're a fan of Roger Clemens and the Boston Red Sox and just, good baseball in general. But so he's one of the big names. Barry Bonds is obviously another one of the big names, but there's a host of, like, Chuck Knobloch's name was in there. I don't recall Chuck Knobloch ever being a massive power hitting home run guy. He's a pretty good second baseman. But you realize that these guys were taking steroids. They, by and large, weren't taking, and steroids being an overarching term to deal with any of these possible drugs or supplements that they might have been taking. Most of them legal, some of them perhaps not. But when you see guys like Knobloch taking it and some of the other sort of non-power hitters that you would see, or even pitchers, you realize they were taking them not necessarily to increase, like the whole thing, Barry Bonds couldn't have hit 70-some-odd homers unless he'd been taking steroids. No, they were taking him to stay healthy, by and large. That 162-game grind year after year after year takes a toll on your body. And what I think you're seeing is players, I don't think it's any coincidence. People have been looking at the home run stats and saying, well, this means steroids. I look at something else. Players are playing longer. There are guys in the major leagues now longer. If you look at the average span of a career, I think it would probably be longer than it would have been in the past. And I think that might have a lot to do with the fact, yes, conditioning, and they take better care of themselves, but also that they're using artificial means of prolonging their career, sort of taking a short-term gain and running the very real risk of long-term health problems or long-term pain. And I think that's the real correlation that you're seeing. So I think if Clemens did it, and who knows, it's still an open question, although I think he probably did. You look at his career path, you would say, well, he was a star, and then he started, there's a reason Boston dumped him. He wasn't pitching very well.
Yeah.
He was injured a fair bit, and he didn't seem to have his stuff anymore. And then all of a sudden he goes to Toronto and he wins 2 Cy Young Awards, and then he goes to New York and he continues on. And his career path looks a lot different now than, say, Dwight Gooden's, a guy he came up with and who was equally as good both when they were young. And Gooden had a good career, but then he flamed out, injuries and some other problems. And Clemens just kept pitching and pitching and pitching. And it makes me wonder, Gooden had a drug problem, but his problem wasn't steroids. He might still be pitching if his problem had been steroids. And, Clemens, if he had been doing whatever Gooden was doing, might have been out 10 or 15 years ago. So all of that said, yeah, it's disappointing to see the Rocket, who is a bit of an ass. There's no question about that personally, but in terms of being a player, a great player, would have been a great player without whatever he might have taken. And unfortunately now, I think people are always going to look at his career and put an asterisk by it, and I don't think there's anything he's ever going to be able to do about that. And Barry Bonds is the same way, and, well, Chuck Knobloch and Andy Pettitte and all those guys. But the thing is, Tim, I think you can put an asterisk next to the entire generation because we'll never know who was and who wasn't. You know, but you can put an asterisk next to every generation. You can put an asterisk next to Babe Ruth's generation and say those guys never pitched against Negro League players. You know, some of the best players in the country weren't allowed to play Major League Baseball until Jackie Robinson. Garrett, Ruth, Cobb, Wagner, they never played against blacks. Mm-hmm. So perhaps against all, you know, how many home runs would Lou Gehrig or Babe Ruth have hit if they'd had to face, you know, guys like Bob Gibson, for instance, or Satchel Paige in their era? Who knows? So every era is different. Every era has its things. Our era, it's going to be steroids. But at the end of the day, to me, it doesn't undermine what they accomplished. Clemens was a great player. Bonds was a great player, regardless. I mean, you don't hit 300 like Barry Bonds did simply because you're taking steroids. You hit 300 because you're a great ball player.
Yeah. And what about the Hall of Fame now? Do you think chances are probably Clemens and Bonds will be on the ballot the same year because they both seemingly retired this year? What do you think the odds are for these guys going in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. Bonds is going to be. They might have to wait a year or two. You know, they might get punished by sports writers who will say, look, you know, we don't like either of these guys, and let's make a bit of an example. But there's a difference between Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens on the one hand and Mark McGwire on the other. McGwire is going to have a hard time getting in the Hall of Fame because I don't think his career stats stand up nearly as well to Bonds. I mean, Bonds stole bases. He was a reasonably good outfielder back in the day. He hit for power. He hit for average. He drew walks. He got on base. I mean, Bonds, despite the fact that he was a jerk, was a great baseball player. Mark McGwire hit home runs, and for a few years hit for a decent average. But there were a lot of years where Mark McGwire was hitting 230 and 240. If any player benefited it really from steroids, I would say it was McGwire. Clemens, the same thing. Clemens would have been a 250, 300 game winner easy, and he would have had, 4 or 5 Cy Young awards easy. He was already a Hall of Famer before he went to New York, just from his work with Toronto and Boston. So, yeah, I don't see how you can keep those guys out of the Hall of Fame. The only possible way would be if they have criminal convictions attached to them and for perjury or whatever. But here's the thing. I don't think either of them ever should have been before Congress or before anything. What business does and this gets to the Mitchell report, what business does the government have investigating Major League Baseball? As far as I can see, none. There's no reason they should be sticking their nose into this. This is baseball's problem. If baseball wants, because what these people were doing, by and large, was not illegal. Nobody was breaking any laws. They might have been breaking the rules of Major League Baseball, but even that is questionable. So I don't see why you should be hauling guys like even Rafael Palmeiro or Mark McGwire before Congress. Honestly, you've got a war in Iraq, you've got gas nearing $4 a gallon, the economy's in the shambles, and you're spending your time sort of questioning Rafael Palmeiro and Roger Clemens about whether they use steroids? Please. So if it's like Bill Clinton, yes, he lied, and so that's bad, and he should have been impeached for that. But the thing is, he never should have been asked the question in the first place because, frankly, it's nobody's business whether he got a blowjob in the White House. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not Congress's business whether or not Roger Clemens or anybody else used steroids in Major League Baseball. So even if they're convicted of something, lying to Congress, whatever, even that, I think people are going to look at and go, well, look, no, in terms of the integrity of the game, I don't see how they were any more egregious than anybody else who was playing the game at that time. They just seemed to be the guys that sort of get singled out. Joe Jackson doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. He threw a World Series. Roger Clemens, if anything, he was trying to prolong his career so that he could help teams win World Series. And I don't think he was cheating. And so unless you can prove to me that they broke the rules of baseball, then they should be in the Hall of Fame.
All right.
There you go.
Unfortunately, you don't get a vote, though, right?
I do, though. I do get a vote, don't I? No? Oh.
No, this isn't like the All-Star game.
No. McGuire's problem, though, is not going to be necessarily steroids. It's going to be the combination of steroids and the fact that his stats perhaps are just not good enough when you have that taint of steroids. Palmeiro will have the same problem. I mean, if they had hit over 650 home runs, both of them, I don't care what they did, would be in the Hall of Fame. But Bonds is a lock for the Hall of Fame at some point.
I don't know, though. Palmeiro, he has I was under the impression he did have Hall of Fame numbers. I thought he had like 500 home runs and 3,000 hits or something like that.
Yeah. No, he's got good numbers. He's got numbers that for anybody else would probably get them in the Hall of Fame. And he might well wind up, I think he's a better bet than McGuire, frankly. But Palmeiro, there's no question that Palmeiro lied and specifically lied. And he did it in a way that he seemed offended to even be asked the question. And hypocrites don't fare well, as Governor Spitzer is now finding out. And in particular, I think Palmeiro is the one that seems, with possible exception of Roger Clemens now, the most hypocritical. But Clemens' numbers are just so good. They're just unassailable for the Hall of Fame. And I think Barry Bonds is in that same category too. Palmeiro, he might have to wait a couple of years. He'll probably get in someday. McGuire is the one I think who's going to have the real problem. So
yeah. And before we set the interview up, you were pretty excited about Joe Torre heading out to L.A. to Bishop Country.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? The whole transition of power in New York, the end of the Torre era, Joe Girardi, all that stuff. Let's hear your thoughts on that as a Red Sox fan.
I like Joe Girardi. He was a good player, and I think he'll be a good manager. And Joe Torre was a good player, and he was a good manager, and I think he still is. I think it's win-win for everybody. I think Torre was tired in New York. I think his time had sort of run its course. He'd done his thing there. But I still think he has stuff to give. I think what he needed was a team with a payroll, with a good core group of players that just needed a swift Tommy Lasorda-like kick in the butt. And that, the Dodgers are that team. They have a group of players that could win a World Series if everything falls right for them. So it's not talent they're lacking. What they were just lacking was somebody to sort of say, hey, and then hit them over the head with a shovel. Girardi, he's a good manager. I think he's a good guy, and, he's got a good group of players in New York, and he's got all the money that the Yankees organization can bring if he needs to fix a problem. So I think both of those teams are going to be contenders this year. I think you could see a Yankees-Dodgers World Series, which would be great for baseball. I'd love to see it. I wouldn't bet my money on that, but it's possible that either or both of those teams could wind up in the World Series. I think they're both playoff teams this year, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then who knows what happens after that. So it's good. I think it's a good move all the way around. It's good for Torre. It's good for Girardi. It's good for the Yankees. It's good for the Dodgers. And it's good for baseball because you need at least some of your marquee teams to be in the playoffs. It's good to have a Cleveland or a Kansas City or a Milwaukee, but you need a Boston, LA or New York, or at least maybe even two or three of those to sort of balance everything out. And LA has been missing in action for far too long. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Dodgers, but I love the Dodgers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't cheer for them, but I just love to see the Dodgers, the classic uniform, the history, everything they've got going. And it would be nice, no offense to the Rockies or the Diamondbacks, but I'd rather see the Dodgers in the World Series than those two Johnny-come-latelys. So hopefully things will swing in the West, in the National League, back to Dodgerville.
What about these Florida teams? Should we fold them, you think, and maybe move them somewhere else because they fucking both suck and no one even goes to the games?
Yes. Look, there shouldn't be professional hockey teams in Florida. That's a no-brainer. And there probably shouldn't be professional baseball teams in Florida, judging by how things have gone. It's just people go to Florida to go to Disneyland, maybe to catch a Dolphins game if you have to go see a professional sport. But it's just not, it doesn't seem to be a market that's conducive to Major League Baseball, and certainly not to the National Hockey League, which I know we're not talking about. But whenever I talk about Florida, somehow the fact that there's two NHL teams there, but none in Manitoba, just grates on me a little bit. So I would say, yeah, I don't, like the Devil Rays. Honestly, the only reason I go see a Devil Rays game is I could catch the Red Sox or the Yankees cheap if they were in town. And the Florida Marlins, yeah, they got 2 World Series wins. Good for them. But, that's a franchise that's going nowhere. And so no offense to the good folks of Florida, but there are other cities that I think would embrace baseball, and those teams would be better off in those cities, wherever they are. And I say that as a proud Canadian who watched the Montreal Expos, which I think was at one time a very good franchise, wither and die on the vine, and then finally get to move to Washington, where they're still a lousy team now, but at least they're a lousy team in a city that actually wants baseball. And Montreal was a city by the end that didn't want baseball anymore. And I think if you've got teams in places where it's obvious that they're being propped up to a large degree by Major League Baseball, and I don't mean in direct subsidies, but it's a complicated story, but they just don't belong there. So give, I don't know, the Florida Marlins to Vegas. I don't even know if a team would succeed in Vegas, but they seem to want a team in Vegas. Give them to Vegas. Put Tampa Bay up in Portland. Nobody will notice the difference. It's always raining. So, give them to Portland, Oregon, and see if a team can make a go there. Or put it in Vancouver, up in Canada. You might be able to get a team in Vancouver or whatever city you want to put them in. But to have them in Florida, it's just not working. And it's probably time that folks went, no.
And then the team that you were really a booster for last year on the special, the Detroit Tigers, they've actually they've made some big improvements this year in the off season. I think I'm getting a little nervous about them when the season starts. They've added Dontrell Willis and Miguel Cabrera, who's a big hitter, and also Edgar Renteria, which was an early trade that kind of has fallen by the wayside. Not many people remember that happening, but it did right around the early part of the hot stove period. You must be interested in how the Tigers are going to do, right?
Not really, because I'm not a Tigers fan. Thank you, though, jerk, for still busting my chops a year later about, hey, that was a good pick last year. It just didn't pan out. They were close. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs this year. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's a bold prediction.
They have. Oh, yeah.
Really? You really think so?
No, it's a tough division.
I don't know, though. I mean, the only other team in the division I think is any good is really Cleveland.
Bingo. I was very impressed by Cleveland last year. I think they're going to be even better this year. So I would take Cleveland. Well, now, look, we're into prediction mode, aren't we? Yeah.
We're getting closer to predictions. Well,
seeing how I'm here, to me, it's Cleveland, Boston, and New York. One of those teams is a wild card, and I think it's probably going to be Boston. I think New York wins the division. And in the West, it's probably going to be Los Angeles, the Angels, the LA Angels of Anaheim, or whatever they call themselves. Yeah, I'd pick them. So, but I think the Indians are the team to beat in the Central. And Detroit's, they'll have a good season. They'll win 80 some odd games, maybe 90, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. They got a shot. I just think Cleveland's is a better team. So.
Wow. What did you think of the playoffs? You must have enjoyed them, obviously, because the Red Sox won.
I watched the championship series, and then when the World Series came on, I kind of tuned out after game 2 because it was obvious what was going to happen. And I wasn't quite as interested. I think I saw the last 2 innings of the final game and went, yay. And then I went back to work.
Yeah.
Because I was working. And I, as you might recall, I had been down for a fair bit of it in the United States. I was traveling, at the X conference and then my extended trip through down to LA. So some of that was going on, I think, while I was in the U.S. and I wasn't really watching TV or whatever. But the championship series, especially the American League Championship Series, I did see all of that, and that was great.
Yeah, that was really awesome. It was easily the best of the series that they had. Most of them were all sweeps anyway.
Yeah.
So it was kind of disappointing in that sense. But I was hoping the Cubbies would do a little better because that's who I picked last year, and at least they made the playoffs. So. Yeah. But I'm not as enthused about them this year as I was last year, so we'll see.
Really?
Yeah, I just don't know if they rectified all the problems they had, but they got that 100-year thing going, so they might have that to prop them up. And one other off-season thing I want to ask you about: what about the Johan Santana trade? Because that was pretty big news. It looked for a while like he was going to go to the Red Sox. I was kind of on the fence about that. I wasn't sure if I liked that move or not. But of course, it didn't end up that way. He ended up with the Mets. What do you think of that? Should the Red Sox have done more to get him?
Well, what more could you do? They offered him zillions of dollars. It's just the Mets offered him zillions of dollars plus one or whatever. And the Mets are one of the few teams that can spend as much, if not more, than Boston. So they did. And, Red Sox, National League, I think he's actually a better fit in the National League. I think he'll enjoy his time there. And he's probably going to win 17 to 20 games and maybe even pick up a Cy Young award. And he'd be good in anybody's rotation. But, the Red Sox, I think they'll do all right without him.
All right.
Sorry, that seems anticlimactic, doesn't it? But
no. I mean, there wasn't really. I'm sure you're glad the Yankees didn't get him, right?
Yeah. Well, because that's a bigger, that's a more obvious threat. I'd be particularly glad that the Blue Jays didn't get him. I mean, they weren't even trying, but the Blue Jays are one more quality pitcher away from bumping either New York or Boston out of the playoffs.
Absolutely.
And they do need that one quality pitcher. They got Halladay and then a bunch of guys who are okay but not great. You need a good, solid number 2 guy there. But they could be a wild card team this year,
Absolutely.
Literally and figuratively. And I could see them winning 93 games and Boston winning 91, and the Red Sox not making the playoffs or the Yankees not making the playoffs. So yeah, my wild card predict in the American League, which is to say the team that could actually get in and bump one of those other four out. To me, it's the Blue Jays, and they're a team that could actually go all the way, or they could win 78 games. They're kind of on that, between the third and fourth dimension in a paranormal sense kind of thing. They flit in and out, and they're very close to being a really, really good team. And they're just as close to being an okay team that doesn't do anything.
Peter Gammons is really strong on their number 3 pitcher, McGowan, I think his name is. He said he's going to be quite good. And from what I saw of him last year, he was really good. So I think another year of seasoning, he could be really strong.
The one thing, above all other things they have going for them, I would say 2 things to watch for the Jays. Roy Halladay, who I think is probably the best pitcher in the American League, especially now that Santana's over in New York, and Scott Rowland, who's looked pretty good in spring training. And if he can come back anywhere near where he used to be as a player a couple of years ago, then they've got themselves a really good guy.
Yeah, they've got a quality roster. They're definitely sort of flying under the radar right now, but they're a good pick, I think, if someone's going to pick them for anything. Now, we have your picks here for the American League. You got the Yankees for the AL East, the Indians for the Central, the Angels for the West, and the Red Sox for the wild card, possibly Toronto if something happens.
They got a shot.
Okay, now what about the National League?
Well, there's the Mets and Dodgers, and then there's everybody else, as far as I'm concerned. Whoever wins the Central and flip a coin, no shot at going to the World Series. Barring acts of God or something, I just don't think it's a very strong division. So that leaves you with the West, and I think the Dodgers, Torrey will whip those guys into shape. I think the Rockies were a one-hit wonder. Decent team, but they're not coming back. So I like the Dodgers, and how can you not like the Mets? I hate the Mets, but how can you not like them to get into the playoffs and then maybe go all the way? So I think, it's probably, if everything plays the way it should, to me, it's a Dodgers-Mets championship series, which I think would be great for baseball. And I think the Mets, this is the year that they go all the way to the World Series.
Oh, so you're picking the Mets for the National League Championship?
Yes.
And what about the American League?
I hate to say it, but I kind of like the Yankees.
Wow.
I think there could be a real Subway Series.
I told you the other day I'm getting a little nervous about them. I don't know which way to go yet. Either I'm really nervous about them or I'm kind of not too worried about them, and it goes either way. But so far from what I've seen in the spring training and everything, they look like they're going to be a pretty good team. And Girardi might have given them that extra boost.
I think the Mets are the National League's easier. I think the Mets should come out of the NL. The Dodgers maybe have a shot, but I think the Mets are the team to beat and a clear favorite. In the American League, it's tougher. The Yankees, the Red Sox, the Angels, and the Indians, I think any one of those 4 teams could make the World Series. I think the Jays have a shot. There are other teams, even the Tigers, obviously, have a shot. Even the White Sox, there are teams out there that if sort of everything kind of rolls their way, could have a really good year. Much tougher to pick the American League, but I think the Yankees, I don't know, there's just something, I think that having that new manager, and Girardi's a good guy, and they still have a good roster and a good lineup. And the Red Sox had their year last year. I don't think they're going to repeat. And something about the Angels rubs me the wrong way. So I think it's either the Yankees or the Indians. I think the Indians have a shot too. And here's my National League wildcard team. The team that could make an impact would be the Phillies.
The Phillies?
Yeah. The Phillies are a team. They're like the Blue Jays of the National League.
So would you literally pick them as your wild card? What the hell?
Yeah, actually, I'll go with the Phillies because I don't see anybody in the Central being a wild card team. And out west, Arizona, Colorado, San Diego, they're all decent teams. But, I think the Phillies, they got a shot. I think this might be their year to get in the playoffs again. And in the Central, I'll pick the Cardinals.
Okay.
Because they're going to bounce back.
All right.
They had a horrible year last year. I mean, the guy died. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and they still didn't play all that bad. They were in the race even for a while, sort of floating under 500, but they're in a division where floating under 500 puts you right smack dab in the middle of the race. So, yeah, I'll take the Cards in the Central to get swept by somebody in the first round of the playoffs.
More than likely. Now, I think you're severely underestimating Arizona. Dude, they have Dan Herron and Webb, both very good pitchers, and Randy Johnson as their number 3, even if he, even a lousy Randy Johnson is still pretty good.
Look, I'm just telling you, I didn't underestimate him. I said that the West is a pick'em division. I just think the Dodgers, with Torrey, he makes a difference. And I saw the Dodgers play last year, their final game, and they should have mailed it in. They're not going to the playoffs. It's the final game of the season, and it was like, why would you care? And they got down 6-1, I think, and they came back and they won. In extra innings. And it was obvious just watching them to me, these guys, there were good players on that team and they just needed somebody. They just needed a manager to make the right decisions and have that thing that Torrey has. Very few managers have it, which the ability to lift everybody up and get them playing to their potential. And I think that's what's going to happen with the Dodgers this year. I still don't think it's enough for them to beat the Mets. But it's enough for them to beat the other guys in the National League West.
Yeah, and your overall World Series champion pick is the Mets?
The New York Mets, and God, it hurts me to say that.
Well, it's better than the Yankees.
Yeah, no, I know. No, I'm going with the Mets. I think they beat the Yankees in 5.
And what about, now let's talk a little bit here about the Red Sox, because we really haven't talked much about them. How do you think they're going to do this year?
There's the inevitable World Series sort of hangover. The thing about them going to play in Japan, I think has hurt the team. Not in the sense that you got to fly over there, but all this controversy that's been going on.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff just isn't good. And so it kind of leaves a bitter taste, I think, as you go into the season. Those two things take a bit of the edge off, and they're 1 year older. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they made any significant upgrades over last year. I think they're basically the same team going in. And that's a team that's, 1 year older, and everything went right for them last year. I don't know if that can happen 2 years in a row in the modern era. So, they're a contender, and they will be for as long as they have all that money. I just don't think they're going to be a winner this year. Not World Series winner.
I'm a little nervous. Going in, but I think we're going to see a monster year out of Manny and Ortiz. I think they're both going to have big years.
Yeah.
Because Ortiz is he got his knee fixed, so he's going to be doing all right, and Manny's in a contract year, so
true.
I think they're both going to be. Apparently, Manny's also become like a he's all into meditation now and everything. He's had a real weird changeover in the off season. He read the book The Secret.
Oh God!
He's become an avid reader too, apparently. So he's got that going for him.
Yeah, but you look at the roster. Even if those two guys have monster years, there are other guys on the roster who played. They had their monster years last year.
Yeah, like
Mike Lowell. Career years. Mike Lowell and Euclid, who's a good player, but there were a number of players. Everybody had good years last year. There were no major injuries. It all went right, and I just don't see that happening 2 years in a row. I would call it the Detroit Tigers syndrome. That, everything goes right, and then the next year, not quite everything breaks. And it's so competitive in the American League that I think you need everything to go right in order to make it through there.
Yeah, and it's a long season, so, things happen. We saw what happened a couple of years ago with Veritek. When he went down, the team went right down the drain. So, all it takes is one key injury, and things go haywire. If something happens to Beckett, there's going to be all kinds of problems. So,
and the same is true, say, of Toronto. Something happens to Roy Halladay. We've seen that with the Blue Jays before. That's the end of their season. And there's very few teams that can survive that kind of hit. I think the Mets are the one team that can really survive a major hit somewhere. And they could, just because of the division they're in, but also because of the sort of depth and breadth of their overall lineup. I think they can probably weather any storm better than anybody else, which is why I'm picking them for the World Series.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. I think we pretty much covered all the topics here that I was thinking about discussing. So anything you want to plug or anything coming up that you want to mention that we should know about or anything like that? Of course, stay tuned to the outstanding blog, Red Star. Is it Red Star Film or Films?
The Other Side of Truth, www.redstarfilms with an S, .blogspot.com. And RetroCon 3. There you go.
Yeah, you're going to be at UFO RetroCon 3. I'm seeing if I can work out something for me to get out there. I'm still on the fence about this, so I'm not sure yet. But you'll be at RetroCon 3.
Yes.
And working on your big move to LA and future exciting plans for Red Star.
Yeah, and if I don't know when you're airing this, but if it's before RetroCon, Redfern, Bishop, Kimball, maybe Binnall, Ken Thomas, Adam Gorightly. It's going to be a really good lineup at one of the 7 wonders of the UFO world, the Integratron and Giant Rock, which if you're really into UFOs, you should try and visit at least once in your lifetime. So if you're anywhere near Southern California, April 27th and 28th, come on out. We'll be screening Best Evidence, among other things.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah, this will air before the RetroCon, and I definitely recommend people check it out. The lineup is awesome. We're going to have Bishop on here for the baseball special and Gorightly, so
there you go.
We'll be talking about it anyway, but definitely check it out, and hopefully I can be out there and we can throw some beers back again and raise a little hell out in the desert.
Damn straight.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It was great to have you again. Of course, we're going to have you back for paranormal discussion at some point in the future. Once things settle down a little bit for both of us. And like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, not just tonight, but 3 times last year, and for welcoming me with open arms up there in Canada over the summer, and maybe we can swing some kind of Canada trip again. I know I'll be up in Canada again this summer, so.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure. I'm like 90% sure. So.
Well, maybe I'll come over to PEI this time.
That would be cool. That would be cool. But, yeah, like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, and like I said, for all the great stuff. So I wish you the best, and obviously we'll be in touch. We're always in touch, so take it easy, Paul.
No problem. Thanks, Tim.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2nd annual Binnall of America Audio Baseball Special. Our guest here is a super cool guy. I actually had the chance to meet him in October, and obviously I've interviewed him before on the show, but having a chance to meet him in person was a real thrill for me, and he exceeded my expectations, went above and beyond what I had expected. He's truly a man of the people, which is something that surprised me because he's such a high figure in his field of cryptozoology. And he appeared last year on the BoA Audio Baseball Special, but only in recap form, a little segment from his previous appearance on the show. And after I talked to him here in October, and we actually had a little baseball connection. We're watching the American League Championship Series at the Monster Mash, hiding out in the green room, trying to sneak away and watch some baseball. And he said he would definitely come back here for the baseball special this year. So we've got him here for some fresh discussion on baseball. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the man pretty much in the world of cryptozoology, and he's also a leading figure in suicide study and shooting studies and all that stuff. He is Loren Coleman. Loren, welcome back to the show. Thanks for coming back for the baseball special.
Sure, Tim. It's great to be here, and it was lots of fun trying to deal with those 1 or 2 Cleveland Indian fans as we were rooting for the Red Sox in the green room.
There you go. Well, I guess before we sort of dive into the baseball, let's just do a little update. What have you been up to since the last time we talked to you, and how have you been in the last, since October at least? What's going on?
Oh, it's always busy. I've been, writing lots of blogs for Crypto Mundo. I actually just got back from one of my dual trips down to Florida. I did a little, what I call the Pinky expedition. Pinky is a dinosaur-like creature that was reported during the 1950s and through the 1970s, with reports back into the 19th century of a dinosaur-like creature, lake monster in the St. John's River area. So I went out almost every day in a boat or doing a little expedition, Gatorland and Dinosaur Land on the side trips. But I also was down there because my son is a shortstop with a college team and a co-captain of the Brandeis University team. So they were playing the UAA tournament series, and they came out on top 5 wins to 2 losses for that whole week. And so that was lots of fun. And I happened to be the sort of the director of the boosters for the Brandeis baseball team and helped out quite a bit with the team down there.
Awesome. Sounds great. Now, what you were telling me when we met in October was that you'd seen a lot of the Sea Dog games up there, because that's right around your area, huh?
Oh, definitely. I live in Portland, Maine, and I grew up in a minor league baseball family. My grandfather was the head groundskeeper for the Decatur, Illinois Commodores, which was a minor league farm team for first the St. Louis Cardinals and then the San Francisco Giants. And my family went to almost every game, and I grew up, with my brothers in their stroller, and I was the oldest one. And then my father would help him shag balls. And so when I moved, around the country and then finally ended up in Maine, I was very delighted. I think it was about 12 years ago that the minor league team, the Sea Dogs, really started here. And that for 10 years they were a Marlins team, and then the last 2 years they've been a Red Sox AA team. So those first 10 years I had season tickets with 5 other families and would catch a lot of games. But as my boys grew older and older in high school baseball, I would go to less minor league games and more, high school games and then college games. So my time with the minor league team has kind of gone downhill with my own involvement firsthand with baseball.
Yeah. You must have seen a lot of the guys coming up then through the Sea Dogs organization that we know about today, huh?
Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan of Josh Beckett, who was a Marlin, and Renteria. A lot of those guys, early on were first with Marlins, and then because of John Henry's connection with both the Marlins, then the Red Sox, a lot of those guys you'll see are naturally kind of first Marlins, go to other places, and then, people like Brad Penny and that are kind of sprinkled around the major leagues now. But a lot of them, some way or another, seem to end up back at the Red Sox. So it's been kind of fun to watch that. And then, of course, lots of the new guys like Dust Pedroia and, Papelbon, they came through the Sea Dogs organization too.
Yeah, that's cool. I wish there was there's some minor league teams around here, but it's still kind of a hike for me to get out to Lowell or something like that to see them. But definitely get to see a lot of the future stars there. Now, there was a lot of stuff going on here in the off season that we could dive into. What story really piqued your interest the most? I'll throw some out here, and then we'll talk about whatever one you want to. There was the Mitchell report and the Clemens saga that happened throughout January, February, and the congressional hearings and all that. Of course, the changing of power at the Yankees with Joe Torre out and Joe Girardi in.
Hank in, too.
And Hank, yes, and Big Hank.
Really taking the place of George. So, but, let's stop with the steroids. And okay. I think that's a really sad episode for baseball. I'm glad that, in some ways I really understand why the players didn't want to talk, because what's obvious is that, the players are going to be the ones to get blamed, and the management usually tries to get out of it. And I think that's quite obviously been part of what we've seen happen. I mean, Clemens, and whether he lied or not, and I think it is developing with the photographs that were taken of him with at some of the parties that he said he wasn't at and different things like that. We're seeing that Clemens, certainly his ego, which has been quite apparent down through the years, whether he's been with the Yankees, Blue Jays, or the Red Sox, is quite in evidence. But what I really am disappointed about is that there's always been something going on in baseball, whether it was gambling during, the Black Sox era or whatever Babe Ruth was doing with too many hot dogs, too many prostitutes, and other things. There's always something moralistically to find that's unfortunate about baseball. And yet the game really does happen between the lines. And so to start talking about asterisks or that this era is going to be, the record shouldn't be seen as really important. I think that's obviously going to be debated by the statisticians and different people like that. But in general, the game has been enjoyable. It's been well played, and it's been exciting. I mean, after all, it's entertainment. And just because Paris Hilton has sex tapes out there, or Britney Spears has a bad moment, doesn't mean that those aren't good entertainers in other spheres, other parts of the of the world, and we kind of forget that, I think, sometimes about baseball. Baseball is life, but it also is entertainment. It should be fun, and we really shouldn't lose kind of sight of that. My son and I have one son who's a shortstop, and obviously I've been very pro-defense for a long time. So in many ways, what I see coming out of the steroids era is a much more attention back again to defense and kind of small ball and different things like that, which I think really has, even though the home runs get a lot of attention and people have talked about how home runs have really brought the game back sometimes after strikes, I really think that the basics of the game are always going to be there and will always be the foundation. And I think that out of all of the steroid stuff, we're going to see the basic game being played once again, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that in the Red Sox because they really upped the defense in the last few years, especially.
Oh, yeah. A lot more bunting always is a good indication that, people are understanding that small ball and suicide squeezes and different things like that are important.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned Big Hank. What do you think of Hank Steinbrenner? He's become quite a colorful character here in the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry. Came out of nowhere kind of this year, but he's had a lot to say, it seems.
Well, I think that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. The genetics are there, and I think the Steinbrenners are carrying on a tradition of, arrogance and all of that. Possibly firing people and everything. I mean, we've already seen hints of that, and I think that, poor Joe, the new Joe that's in there, Joe Girardi, has to really be watching his back very carefully for whether or not he's going to stay for very long.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to see some of the same old things from the Yankees. I think that for Yankees fans, the talent just isn't there, and they've got sort of some young people that aren't so talented and some older people on the team. So indeed, their kind of stock is going down as the Red Sox seems to be still on the increase. And that must be very hard for those Yankee people that have always wanted to be number one.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for them. I alternate between not too worried about them and then kind of worried about them. So I'm not really sure. I'm going to have to wait to see how the first month plays out or so.
Yeah, well, I think we always have to be worried about the Yankees. But, we might actually get some trouble from the Dodgers later on whenever we get down to the World Series. There may be some, Torrey has a good game and is a good manager. And we may see some of that from the West Coast now.
Yeah, and like Paul Kimball and I were talking last night about this, and definitely got to keep an eye out for the spoiler team at Toronto. I think if they stay healthy, they're going to be a real challenge, I think, in the American League East.
Right. We just don't have to worry about the Montreal Expos anymore.
Exactly. So what are your thoughts about the Red Sox here as the season kicks off? Not so much. I almost think of the Japanese games, even though they're official games, they still feel kind of like exhibitions to me. But what are your thoughts on the team, how they're going to shape up for 2008?
Well, I think the team looks pretty good, the Red Sox. I think what's unfortunate, and I've seen and read quite a few studies about this, that after a team goes over to Japan, it really does take a lot out of people. And the teams generally come back, and you'll notice that statistically the records kind of dip for a while. So I think that this whole business about kind of being forced to go to Japan and the whole controversy about whether or not they were going to strike due to giving their coaches and, the extra pay really sets off the season on a bad foot. And so it's very exciting for the Japanese and the Japanese players and baseball in general. Baseball is a worldwide game now. So it's nice to see that part of it. But I think the physical and emotional toll that it does take out of the men themselves and in some ways their families for them to be, 18 hours in a plane, to be over there for a week, all of the differences about the culture and the food, and then to play those games, come back and try to hit the ground running, has been shown to really be a deficit. So, I'm excited to watch the games over the weekend and next week and all of that, from Japan, but I think it's a bad start to the season. But the Red Sox generally can, bring it around by the end, and so I think they're contenders. But of course, as we saw after 2004, they didn't bounce back for a, year-to-year, repeat. So I'm just very cautious about it. Hope it's there, but Josh Beckett's back problems already worry me.
Yeah.
He's not going with the team over to Japan. He's having back problems. Schilling's out. So, and who knows how long that'll really, Cologne, who was going to be a savior, is now back with the minor leagues. So, we may have pitching trouble already. Some of the young guys, like Burkholz is really good and they may be saviors, but they're young. And, once people figure out their pitches, there's probably going to be a little dip in the middle there for them, because then they're going to have to, outfox the batters. So it's kind of, the usual chess game. It's just, once again, it seems like the pitching is a vulnerable part for the Red Sox once again.
What about Daisuke? You think he's going to have a good year this year? I'm kind of predicting a pretty strong year because he's sort of hopefully gotten over that initial first year in the majors.
Yeah, I think for one thing, as a lot of people understand, his first year was supposedly, so shaky, but his first year on the Red Sox would have been a sterling year for, somebody on the Royals.
Yeah.
So I think that, for him to do better will be great. And I do think that there's this cultural adjustment that does happen with the Japanese players, and he will be better. It's just that, he already was pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with him. I think that, Okajima, the reliever, has already kind of been shaken a bit during spring training, so I'm hoping he settles down. He ended the year pretty stressed out and weak, I think, and so hopefully he'll stretch himself out a little bit better and have a good year. He was one of the surprises for the Red Sox last year, and I'm hoping to see some good things from him.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a monster year from both Manny and Ortiz. I'm thinking they're both probably going to be pretty strong this year.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think one of my favorites coming up, of course, is Jacoby Ellsbury, and I think, I did see a lot of him at the Sea Dogs, and he is a fantastic player, and I hope he gets lots of time in center field. And just the whole idea that he's the first full-blooded Dene, which is Navajo, in the major leagues. He has a lot of cultural pride, and I think he'll be really trying to excel for many reasons. And he may be the surprise in the outfield for the whole year.
I was very impressed with him last year, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of him this year. It seems like every year there's a team that sort of is the surprise team that's really strong. A few years ago it was the Tigers. Last year it was the Brewers. Is there anyone you think that's going to sort of break out of the pack this season and kind of become a player as far as teams go?
Well, I think that, obviously because the Royals have been so bad lately, that they seem to have really tried to readjust over the winter. And, they may not be in the World Series, but I'm always happy to see teams that are at the bottom really come more to the middle.
Yeah.
So, I'm an old St. Louis Cardinals fan, and I'm always, interested how Tony La Russa is going to do once again, with all of the challenges of his team. Albert Pujols, I think, really is a guy that's waiting for a breakout year. And in the year in which we've had to hear so much about Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, it may be a guy like Albert Pujols that really pulls things out as far as having a run for home runs or things like that may direct attention away from any one team, but it may be more individuals once again that we're looking at.
And what about Bonds and Clemens? You think they're finished now? We won't be seeing them play again?
Oh, I don't think Bonds, I think, is going to try.
Yeah.
And so he already played under a cloud with the San Francisco Giants, so I think we may see him back. And I would predict he'd probably play for a Florida team. And so I'm really looking to him getting a few shots back down there. Although I think a lot of people would be just as happy to not see him play ever again. And I think definitely Clemens is done. I just think he's a bitter man now. He feels really betrayed by Pettit and other people, and I don't see him out there on the mound again. And I think that until this is resolved for him, whether or not he's indicted or, perjury charges are brought or whatever, that may be good to really have him be in the background just for baseball.
And like you were talking about asterisks and all that stuff and sort of the cloud that's over the whole era, what do you think about the Hall of Fame chances for Clemens and Bonds? Because they're probably going to be on the ballot the same year if they both stay retired now.
Well, I think it's in the same ballpark, so to speak, to use that metaphor, as Mark McGwire. I think that Mark McGwire was an excellent player, did many good things, and you'll never see him in the Hall of Fame. Because of the testimony, because of the less than forthrightness at the end of his career. And I think that's really unfortunate. I think Barry Bonds, Clemens, Canseco,
Palmeiro.
Palmeiro, a lot of those guys, which we would expect it to be in the Hall of Fame, just won't be going. And it may be after all of us are dead that some veterans committee way in the future will vote in Clemens because they'll look at his overall record and say, well, my God, Babe Ruth had some outrageous things he did. And but there's also some other Negro League players that have been forgotten that really probably need to get in long before Clemens.
Now you're kind of you're within the realm of you're in the New England area. Do you ever get a chance to go down to Fenway much? I know you know probably as well as I do how hard it is even to get tickets in general. But do you ever get a chance to go down to Fenway and see a game?
Well, usually once a year. I didn't make any game last year because I was so involved in going to college games all around New England. I mean, there's a Salem State game, and I just travel all over New England to see my son's team. So I've kind of skipped Fenway, but oftentimes what happens is I would go to UFO conference in Seattle, and as part of my speaker's fee, they would get me a ticket to the Seattle Mariners against some other team. So I often do that. I often end up seeing major league games around the country that are kind of hooked in with my speaking engagements about cryptozoology or paranormal or, Fortean phenomena. So that's been quite interesting to do.
Yeah, that's a pretty good deal. I took a trip out to San Diego last year and caught a Padres game, so I can see it's kind of fun to see some of the other teams and see what their parks are like and stuff like that.
Right. I actually, during the middle of the 70s, I went to quite a few San Francisco games, and it was horrible at Candlestick Park. I'm glad they replaced that one. It was so cold. You wouldn't expect it from San Francisco, but out there on the point, it was just freezing cold. And actually, I've been to a Padres game back in the days when it was at the old stadium that was all brown. So it's nice to see some of these new parks. And actually in Portland with Hadlock Field, which is an outstanding minor league baseball field. It's good to be able to go down there and, really kind of enjoy some old time games in a good park. And what was great, of course, for my sons is that, since the field was originally the high school field and then the city took it over to make it into a minor league park, all of the baseball players that are in high school in Portland get to play in a minor league baseball field. So that's quite a privilege.
Yeah, that's cool. That sounds neat. Have you ever been to Wrigley?
Oh, yeah, I've been to Wrigley. I grew up in Illinois.
Oh, okay.
And grew up in Decatur and went to school in undergraduate school at SIU. And so I had family in the Chicago area, would go to Wrigley. I've been to the old Comiskey Field and then, of course, to the old Busch Stadium. I haven't been to either one of the new fields, either the new Busch or the new Comiskey, but those old parks were really, really quite enjoyable. I'm so happy to know that the new ownership of the Red Sox really want to keep Fenway.
Yeah.
It's sad to see places like Tiger Stadium go. I've been there too, to the old one.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as how hard it is to get Red Sox tickets, nowadays the joke is if you want to see the Red Sox, you got to go to Baltimore.
That's quite true. I mean, I think it was maybe 10 years ago I got tickets to the Red Sox for my son and his girlfriend, and they were it cost me like $600 after I was done, because you have to go online and find somebody that wants to sell them, and to get good seats, they're just not that easy to get.
What about Jim Rice? Think he's going to get the call next year for the Hall of Fame or no?
No, I don't think so. It's funny, my son did an internship at Nesson, and I actually was able to talk to Jim Rice on the phone once. I got some going away cake for them once, and he got on the phone and jokingly yelled at me for not getting them plates to go with the cake. So he's a guy with a great sense of humor, and I think he's had to really, I've seen on many local shows here in the New England area, where he's had to have a great sense of humor about not being in the Hall of Fame. And he was one of those regular sort of everyday players that, did excel once in a while, but I think that he's just, he's not been a celebrity enough to get in the Hall of Fame, and it's going to take some while.
What about Schilling's chances, you think? You think he's going to get in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, yeah, I think Schilling will definitely get in the Hall of Fame. I mean, they've got to let him in just because of the bloody sock. I mean, they let the bloody sock in, so they've got to let him in. I think the thing with Schilling is he's such a baseball guy. He doesn't want to let go, and I think at some point he's going to have to really wake up, have a conversation with his family and say, I've got to quit this year, because he's the kind of guy that I really see his record kind of slowly, eroding over the years, because he wants to stay in the game, but he's really getting worse and worse. His back, all of his different parts of his body are just not taking it. And he's not an overweight kind of guy, but he's certainly not svelte. And I think that extra weight really is causing him some problems. And yet he's such a tough personality, not kind of aggressive like Clemens, but there's a toughness to Schilling that wants to make him to keep playing.
Yeah.
I think the days of coming back mid-year and getting a contract are really over, and Schilling, I don't think he'll come back mid-year, but it'll just be because his health will allow him to.
Yeah. You think this is probably his last year?
Well, I'd say, half of this year and maybe half of next year, and then I think he's going to realistically quit.
Yeah, because he was sort of just barely hanging on there last year, but he did pretty good in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, he does. He's a big game guy, but it's that back and forth. I mean, I think Wakefield is kind of the one that, for the Red Sox, that it'll be interesting. He just, with the kind of pitches he does, he can last a long time.
Yeah, I'm a big Wakefield fan. I'm hoping he sticks it out long enough to break the wins record for the Red Sox, because he's only about 30 wins away from that.
Yeah, Cy Young, I guess, has it right now.
Yeah, I think it's a tie between Cy Young and Clemens. I think they have like 190-something, and I think Wakefield has something like 169 or something like that.
Well, we should take some of Clemens's wins away then, right? Yeah, I think Wakefield will just hang in there and do that. He's a pretty good ball player.
All right, now it's the prediction part of the show here. We got the predictions from Kimball. We're going to try and do predictions from all the guests. So we'll go through the divisions. Pretty much, I just want to know who you think is going to win the divisions, and then the championships, and then the World Series championships. So we'll run down the list here. American League East, who do you think's got it?
Oh, I think the Red Sox will take it.
American League Central?
I think Detroit's going to surprise people.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a really good team this year. With those trades, I mean, picking up Dontrell and Miguel Cabrera and Renteria, I mean, that's quite a haul. They got quite a lineup now.
Yeah, I think I think they got a pretty good bid for that.
Okay, what about the American League West?
Geez, I guess I'll have to go with the A's, just because I think they're an annual favorite.
Wow. All right. Going on a limb there. I like that.
They're a long shot, but I think I'm going to go with them.
Okay. And how about the wild card?
Wild card, I think the Yankees. Unfortunately, I have to be realistic. I think the Yankees have the ability to really be end of the year, good playoff kind of guys, and getting themselves set up for the playoffs. So I have to say the Yankees.
Yeah, especially if it comes around July or something like that, and they're out of the hunt, then I expect some big moves from them, and they don't give up easily.
If they can do things like move Chamberlain from relief to starter and stuff like that, they'll really have a good shot.
All right, now on to the National League. National League East? National League East.
Well, I guess the Mets.
All right, there's a few good teams there. There's a few teams.
Yeah, some good ones there.
And then what about the doghouse of the Major League Baseball, the National League Central?
Well, I'm just going to go with a personal prejudice here and say the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
Just for the management.
There you go. And what about the National League West, which is really shaping up to be a tough race?
Yeah, well, I think the Dodgers. I think that Torrey's going to bring off some miracles there, and so I do think the Dodgers will bring it out.
Okay, and the wild card for the National League.
Ooh, wild card. I'm going to go against the grain here and say the Marlins.
Wow. All right. Wow. I like that.
Just a real surprise wild card.
Wow. That's good. That's a good call. I like that. And what about who do you think is going to be facing off in the World Series there with National League versus American League? Who do you think the champs are going to be?
I think I'm, getting away from my favorites here and trying to I think we may see an amazing matchup between the Dodgers and the Yankees.
All right. And who do you think is going to win it all?
I think the Dodgers will win.
Wow. All right. Nice. There you go. And
I want to put the asterisk here is that I certainly hope it's the Red Sox, but I'm just trying to go with a psychic prediction.
There you go. It's in keeping with the format of the theme of the show here, so I suppose that works. And it's a long season. Anything can happen. So we saw, like I was saying to Paul last night, we saw what happened to the Red Sox when Veritek went down a couple of years ago. Everything went right down the toilet. So, that.
Well, and the Red Sox are using cash, instead of, any kind of usual backup catcher. So.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the season. I think it's going to be fun. I feel like after the Patriots loss, I'm ready for the baseball season to start for sure. What do you have coming up for you that you want to plug or anything coming up and stuff that's going on? Of course, people can always find out more from you at cryptomundo.com and Copycat Effect blog, of course. Both awesome websites and must-read websites. You got to check those out daily, folks. I'm telling you, they're the best sites out there for news on cryptozoology and the fascinating school shootings phenomenon that you really are just amazingly on top of.
Thanks, Tim. Well, it's interesting. I'm going to be traveling quite a bit, doing a lot of different talks in Alberta, in Kentucky, in Ohio. I'll be at the Monster Mash again this year.
Mm-hmm.
So and then I'm actually just recently been talking to some people about being in Colorado in November at a gathering of ghost hunters. So I'll be branching out, and I actually trying to work right now on going over to France for the History Channel during May. So that could be quite exciting.
Oh wow, France! That's cool. Do they have much? That's for a cryptozoology theme thing, right?
Yeah, it would be for about werewolves.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, those things sometimes actually do come through.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you think of that Monster Quest show, actually, before I let you go here? Because I'm really enjoying that. It's one of the better shows out there, I think, for paranormal stuff on TV.
Yeah, I think, Monster Quest Season 2 is starting up, and they've asked me to actually, I helped them with Season 1 with the Cryptid Canines episode, and I'll be helping them with more of the ones in year 2. I think it's well done. It's by Doug Hudchek, who did the Sasquatch Legend Meets Science documentary. So he has this kind of, including a few skeptic approaches, but also lots about physical evidence and eyewitnesses and recreations, but a little bit different than what you see on Destination Truth, which tries to be more Blair Witchy, I think, and so has a much more scientific background. But in general, the History Channel, Science Fiction Channel, Discovery, and Travel Channel are getting more and more into cryptozoology, so it's a very good time for television documentaries.
Yeah. And I was saying to somebody at the beginning of the year, we were kind of looking at the trends, and it definitely feels like cryptozoology is on the hot trend, if you will. It's definitely seems to be picking up big time this year.
Yeah,
maybe
I think people
displace the ghosts.
Are burning out on the ghosts and the UFO documentaries and really moving into understanding there's just as many, if not a lot more, animal stories out there. And animal stories about cryptozoology really do get the wildlife people involved, as well as the more green audience. So that's probably a lot of pluses there for cryptozoology.
Absolutely. Well, Loren, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show, especially for the lighthearted, off-topic sort of baseball special. I really appreciate it.
It's lots of fun. Lots of fun, Tim.
I had an amazing time meeting you last October, and like I said, folks, he's the real deal. He's a real man of the people, and I really appreciate that. Someone in his position could be a crazy egomaniac, but he's not. He's the most down-to-earth guy I've met in the field, and easily one of the coolest people I've had the chance to meet in the field. So I can't put you over enough, Loren. I was very just starstruck at first, and then I'm like, wait a minute, Loren's just like me. He's a baseball fan. He just wants to watch the game.
Don't talk to me during the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And hopefully we can have you back on the show for esoteric interview and talk about the school shootings and the cryptozoology stuff sometime in the not-too-distant future.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thanks for having me on today.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
Continuing onward here with the BoA Audio Baseball Special. We've got our resident Yankee fan here now for the special. We're going to get all thoughts on all the big changes in the Yankees and all that fun stuff from our next guest. He is the author of the outstanding book, UFOs and the National Security State, Volume 1. I hope we're not going to pester him about Volume 2 here, but maybe we'll find out. He's probably tired of hearing about it. But he is, of course, the outstanding Richard Dolan. Everybody loves Rich Dolan. I get more feedback from his interviews still today after 2 years since he's been on the show. I still get people saying, when are you going to get Rich Dolan back? Yeah, I love that interview with Rich Dolan, putting it on lists of favorite episodes and stuff. So it's great to have him back and talk baseball with him. And I didn't know he was a big baseball fan until I met him at the Crash Retrieval Conference, and we talked a little baseball there at the banquet, so it was a fun time. Rich, welcome back to the program. Thanks for being a part of the baseball special.
Thank you, Tim. Boy, this is fun. I've never done a baseball interview before.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the baseball talk, let's just, update folks on what you've been up to since the last time we heard from you. We did a little shortcut interview at the Crash Conference, November of 06, so it's been a while. So
I've been actually spent the last few months today, in fact, writing my next book, the second volume of my study, UFOs and the National Security State. I've got about 350, 400 pages done. I'm happy with it. I like the way it reads, and there will be a third volume, which will actually be a 3-volume history when it's finished. Big fat study. So, but this year, I think, should be the year that the second volume comes out, which will go right up to 1991. And I'm excited about it. Actually, I'm very happy with the research, the writing. It's really coming together in a way that I'm pleased with.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The tumultuous 80s. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the UFO world in the 80s.
Yes, exactly.
Now let's talk baseball here. You revealed to me that you are a Yankee fan.
I am indeed. Listen, I ask people not to hold it against me. I grew up as a Yankee fan. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and grew up mostly on Long Island. So that's New York Yankees, New York Mets territory. My grandfather was a lifelong hardcore New York Yankees fan who had actually been, I'm not kidding, at Lou Gehrig Day in 1939 when Lou Gehrig gave his speech, The Luckiest Man on the Face of the Earth. My grandfather was there. When I was a kid, he used to take me and two of my cousins to Yankee Stadium all the time. I touched Mickey Mantle when I was 11 years old at Old Timers Day. So, look, man, there's no way that I could ever not be a Yankees fan.
Hey,
it can't happen.
That's fine. Yeah, that's cool.
I I know you're a Red Sox fan. That's why.
I know. Well, it's like a bizarro version of me, so it's it's all good. Well, let's talk about the changes in the Yankees in the last over the offseason here. Joe Torre's out. Joe Girardi's in. What do you think about that change?
I'm very excited about the way the Yankees are looking this year, and I was always a big fan of Torre. He was manager of the Yankees for 12 years, and Torre is the only manager in my memory as a baseball fan in which the Yankees had a sane, stable manager who you didn't think was going to have a freak-out moment, like Billy Martin. I mean, he's the anti-Billy Martin. And the other thing about Torre, of course, is that as soon as he came in, the Yankees just won and won and won and won and won. Now, they actually won the year before he came in when they had still had Buck Showalter there. But Torre, he's the guy who brought in, we had Rivera with Torre, and we had everything came together. Jeter. And I think Joe Torre partly was lucky, but partly also, I think, brought a certain attitude to the Yankee team that they really needed and was great for them. The problem with Torre in the last few years is that he really was becoming a very inflexible manager, in my opinion. Did not know how to use a bullpen or even a pitching staff very well. Which started really to drive me crazy, and just I think it was time to go. I personally blame him for some of the screw-ups that the Yankees had in the postseason. So the fact is, I think it was time for Joe Torre to go. And whether or not Girardi is actually going to be a better manager, I don't know. I was kind of bemused by Girardi's little outburst this spring training with the Tampa Bay Devil Rays over the I don't know if anyone followed this, but there was a big fight. Mm-hmm. And I think Girardi just acted like a little baby. So that's not an improvement. But that's peripheral. What I really want to see is if Girardi's willing to use young ball players. This was Torre's biggest problem, in my opinion. If you were under 25 years old, it's like he didn't want to use you. And he had this attachment to washed up guys who were 35, 38 years old, because they were good 10 years ago. And I want to see some young players. So, in fact, what I think the thing that will make the Yankees exciting this year is they got 3 young new pitchers that I think have a very good chance of being the foundation for a great staff in the years to come. They got Philip Hughes, who I think is just fabulous. Jabba Chamberlain, who blew everyone away when he made his debut last summer. And Ian Kennedy, who is maybe not a number 1 starter, but looks like a darn good pitcher.
Yeah.
And on top of the guys they have, Chen Ming Wang and Andy Pettit, I think that's going to fill out a pretty good rotation.
Yeah, they're formidable this year. I was saying to the other guests, because they're both Red Sox fans, Loren Coleman and Paul Kimball. I'm getting a little nervous here about them. They got a little more of a swagger back than they have.
Well, this is what you Red Sox people are always afraid of the Yankees. I mean, it doesn't matter how good the Red Sox are, and the Red Sox are great, but they're always afraid of the Yankee fans. By the way, I want to point out, I predicted the Red Sox were going to win the World Series. I was very proud of this. When they hired Bill James to come into their front office, and for some people listening, if they are followers of what is known as sabermetrics in baseball, I'm a big sabermetrician in baseball. In other words, it's the study of baseball statistics in, let's say, a much more sophisticated way than traditionally had been the case. Bill James is the guy who really created modern baseball sabermetrics, and he was brought on to the Red Sox front office, I think, in 2001 or 2002, around then. And when that happened, I said to some friends of mine, within 5 years, the Red Sox are going to win the World Series. They're going to reverse the curse. And they did. And I think in a large part is because they really have put together, very intelligently put together baseball teams every single year, and focusing on on-base percentage, which is really one of the things you do with contemporary understanding baseball stats, because on base is what matters. It's not your batting average. I always like the way the Red Sox are put together every year, and they have been a very, very top-notch team, for a few years now.
Yeah, it's been an exciting few years here. I suppose with your appreciation of the young pitchers, then I guess you're glad that they didn't go through the Johan Santana trade.
Oh yes, I was very happy about that. Yeah, I didn't. Santana's phenomenal, but he's also, you never know with a guy like he could be phenomenal for another 10 years, but he also could be peaking now. With pitchers, especially a guy who gets a lot of innings like Santana, you never know. And then, of course, you're going to pay so much money for a guy like this, and you're going to mortgage, other aspects of your team. And the Yankees, they've got a good team in certain ways, but they've got some patches they could fill. They've got a big hole at first base, it looks like. You could always expect a turnaround from Giambi, but then again, you might not. Jason Giambi might just be done. He hasn't hit really well in quite some time now, and he's not even getting on base in terms of walks. So, and then there's Jeter at shortstop, who I think defensively is in danger of becoming a serious liability. There are people who believe he's already a serious liability, and that's not going to improve when you're, 34 years old playing shortstop. So they're going to have to do a few things to keep it fresh. They're going to move people around.
Yeah. What about the tenuous relationship between Alex Rodriguez and the Yankee fans and stuff like that? Especially, it seemed like even worse after he left the team and came back this year in the offseason and all that stuff.
Well, I'm an A-Rod fan. I think that he is absolutely all around the best baseball player, most talented player in the game, the best impact player. Yankee fans didn't like Mickey Mantle throughout most of the 1950s, so this is what they do. Alex Rodriguez is not a guy that I ever would expect to meet personally, so I don't know, but from the things that I hear about him, he seems to be a kind of a sensitive soul, and occasionally dealing with a rough New York crowd, or even a tough, Boston, equally tough crowd, I think. When there's all that pressure to be Superman, sometimes I think it gets him. I think there were times during the season when it affected his performance. It sort of looked like it.
Yeah. But,
no, I mean, I got to think that a player like that is beyond, really truly worrying about what what the fans think. You just have to go out and play your best, because fans are never going to be satisfied.
And you were saying you went to the Yankee Stadium a lot as a kid. Are you saddened that they're going to be tearing it down and opening up a new stadium? What do you think of that?
No, I don't have a strong opinion about this. I haven't gone to a major league game in a long, long time. In fact, I probably would have slipped right out of it had it not been for the fact that I have a father-in-law who's a professional Yankee hater, and so we were like Archie Bunker and Meathead for years and years. So the only thing we could really talk about would be baseball, and that kind of kept me going with baseball. And so I've had this resurgence in the last a little more than a decade now. But I think the old Yankee Stadium is certainly in need of renovation. I don't like the fact that cities are being forced to pay the tax bill for these stadiums. I mean, that bugs me. That's everywhere you go. I mean, cities are basically held at gunpoint by the teams and said, here, make people pay for this. It wasn't like that in the earlier years, of course, where the teams are responsible for building their own stadiums. And I think let's be capitalist here, okay? It is not my job or your job to put out public funds for the sports stadium. I don't believe that. But that's the way it's gone. So.
But you have no nostalgic longing for them to keep the stadium going like we have here in Boston.
No, give me a break. Now, I do have nostalgia for baseball. I play 19th century baseball to this day. This is my 6th, 7th year now. I'm 45 years old, Tim. The body gets creaky. Let me tell you, it does. But I still go out and I play 19th century baseball at a local museum as an exhibition league, and we play 25, 30 games a year. The greatest day in my life wasn't any UFO-related thing. It was the day that I pitched a complete game, shutout, championship game, I'm not kidding you, in 2004 against a team from Boston. To win a 5-game tournament, my team, out of 20, 25 teams competed, we won, and I pitched 3 of our 5 games, including the final championship game. Oh.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the difference in the rules and what that's like, actually, because I've seen some clips of that, but a lot of people probably haven't.
Yeah, it's called, vintage baseball, and anyone who's listening, you could probably do a very quick search on vintage baseball. There's a lot of teams out there now that do this. Baseball, as many people realize, evolved over a long, long period of time. And in America's in the 19th century here in this country, there was lots and lots of variations of what would become baseball. In the version we play, which is in early 1860s, there are no gloves, of course. Baseball gloves had not been developed or invented. The pitching is underhand, so it looks a little bit like softball. You have bases that are 90 feet apart, though. You have an outfield that's a standard size outfield. So, you could watch the game and there's 3 outs. I mean, all of that is pretty much the way it is today. Walks, there were no bases on balls. That rule evolved through the 1870s and 1880s until finally 4 pitches out of the strike zone would be a walk. But in our version, you have an umpire who will basically just have the pitcher, you got to lay that ball in there so that the striker, the batter, can strike at the ball. And the umpire would not even call balls and strikes unless he felt that the pitcher or the batsman was not offering at appropriate, baseballs.
Huh.
So, but for all of that, the games move along very quickly. Like a typical 9-inning game will take about 90 minutes.
And what kind of bats do you guys use?
We try to be authentic about it. The handles are wider than contemporary bats. There's no whip-handled bat like what you really get today. In other words, what players do in modern times is you have as thin a handle as possible, because what that does is it increases your bat speed. You can whip around the bat much faster. But this was not done at all in the 19th century. I mean, this had not really been understood. The modern player who revolutionized that, incidentally, was Ernie Banks, who came up as a fairly light-hitting shortstop in the 50s and then went with a whip-handled bat and started hitting like 40 home runs a year in the 50s. But our bats, the handles are thicker. And there's all kinds of weird designs painted in weird ways, and they get kind of funky with it. I don't know how authentic some of that is, but it looks good to me.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. Yeah, I've seen some clips of it. Like I was telling you, they did like a Conan O'Brien thing where he played for a team, and they did a little skit for it. Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Cool.
If I can find it on YouTube, I'll send you a link or something.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Vintage baseball is a great game, and I've really come to love it at least as much, maybe more in a lot of ways, in the modern game, which I still enjoy. But there's a certain beauty about the field that we play on. We have this gorgeous field. It's a true field of dreams, I must say. It's at a place called the Genesee Country Museum, which is in upstate New York. And, we've played for spectators, many as 1,000 people or more of times have come to watch our game.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes it's like 100 or 50. But, it's fun.
Sounds like a good time. Back on the Yankees here, what about Big Hank Steinbrenner? He's kind of emerged as the new
yes, he has.
voice.
Yes. Well, George Steinbrenner's, I think it was very evident that he had not been very well for the last couple of years, so I guess it was inevitable. I'm just happy that he didn't want to pull the trigger on the Santana deal. I mean, this is something that I could have seen George wanting to have done.
Yeah.
Which is sacrifice the youth to get a big-name star. Maybe some of the credit for influencing Hank Steinbrenner might be Brian Cashman, the Yankees general manager. I suspect that he has the impression that I get with Cashman is that he wants to hang on to the youth. And so if Hank Steinbrenner is willing to listen to what I think is a very good general manager, then so much the better for the Yanks.
One subject that we really talked about a lot in the other 2 previous interviews, but I purposely sort of held it off till now just so we didn't beat the dead horse, was the Mitchell report and all the controversy that came out of that.
Right.
I'm sure, being someone who's interested in politics and all that kind of thing, I'm sure it piqued your interest too with the congressional hearings and everything. What do you think?
Absolutely opposed to any involvement by the federal government in baseball. I mean, honestly, the U.S. government has no business, zero business getting involved in investigating steroids. None. Why? I mean, what is the point here? What it has done is it's going to turn people like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens literally into criminals, okay? Mm-hmm. And this is far, far out of control. It's one thing, it's not that anyone supports the use of steroids. I think everyone pretty much opposes what steroids represents. It represents cheating. Okay. having said that, everyone knows that steroid use, whether it's HGH or whatever other substances are out there, human growth hormone or whatever, is extremely widespread. All right, the Mitchell report, in my opinion, does. I'm not accusing Senator Mitchell of bias here, but it does look very heavily geared toward former Yankee players.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, and there's no way you're going to convince me that that's an accurate proportion in terms of steroid abusers. That most of them are former Yankee players. It just doesn't seem very credible to me. So I think that there is a legitimate argument that some of the Yankee fans have made on the blogs and out there that, not that they're accusing him of anything, but that it really doesn't look objective. And then to get a guy like Roger Clemens, who I feel bad for Roger Clemens, to tell you the truth. I mean, I honestly really do. Okay? I think, like most people think, that he's probably lying through his teeth about it. But this is like with Bill Clinton when he was accused of smoking weed.
Yeah.
Or having the affair. I mean, here's Hillary 5 feet away from him. I mean, who's going to say to the world, "Oh yeah, I slept with, I had carnal relations with this other woman"? I mean, no one's going to say that. And it's the same with Clemens now. Clemens has just put together the most amazing Hall of Fame pitching career of modern times. I mean, better than Tom Seaver, who was the guy that I grew up idolizing as a pitcher. And Clemens was better than that. I mean, he really was. And so now, he doesn't want to admit this. And so he's been forced into a position of lying. And that's bad enough. But now what makes it worse is that because the federal government is involved, it's really going to put him at risk of more serious consequences, i.e. jail time. And the same with Barry Bonds, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Bonds, and this is just, it's not right. We're living in such a time of overbearing government, micromanagement of our personal lives. And I just want to say, get the hell out of my life, guys.
Yeah.
Get out of their life. Leave these guys alone. Leave Major League Baseball out of it. Out of it. There is no business that any central government has in putting baseball players to prison over steroids. And in particular because whatever crime they may have committed, I mean, it's not like we're lying about having committed a murder.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're lying about having taken steroids to break some baseball records, in which, by the way, let's be upfront about it, there is so much pressure on these guys to do this. And I don't buy the argument that some have made that, I can understand a minor league player taking steroids to try to make it into the major leagues, but these guys are at the top of their game. They have no excuse. That's baloney. Okay? Because no matter how good you are, there's always some other guy who's going to try to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And these athletes are world-class professional athletes. They take a lot of pride in what they are. They want to be the best. And they know that other guys who are just about at their level are taking them. And their attitude, and we know that this was with Barry Bonds when Mark McGwire broke all his records, and Bonds is thinking, I'm better than that guy. How come he's getting all the glory and I'm here in the decline phase of my career?
Yeah.
So he starts juicing up. And then plus there's money involved. Even, especially for the big names like Clemens and Bonds, because I mean Clemens made $20 million in playing half a season last year. Good grief. You think there's not a financial incentive? So there's so much money involved in baseball, in these professional sports, that you just know that any athlete is going to have a massive amount of incentive to take whatever he can take to be at the top level of competing. And we've got to figure out a way in professional sports to bring some rationality into how we deal with this. It's like we're still the puritanical society we were 300 years ago when we came over on the Mayflower. I mean, we've got these hypocritical attitudes like, this is right, that's wrong, wrong. Okay, and you let it go, because when you have such a strong moral outrage, human beings are human beings. There's always going to be people who break the rules, and you just kind of let it go until then there's a reaction, and then you enforce all those rules. And they're overreacting.
Yeah.
And it saddens me, and I just think it's I don't know what to do about HGH. I think at this point, until you can test for it, you just have to let it be legal. I can't see how fair it is to make it illegal when you can't test for it.
Yeah. It seems like the only.
If you can find a way to test for it, then sure, whatever, ban it. But for right now, I mean, I don't know what they can do.
Yeah, they're in a bind there on that one. Do you think Bonds and Clemens, do you think they're done now? Do you think they're going to make a comeback, or do you think they're all done?
Oh, I cannot possibly imagine Roger Clemens taking to the field. Who's going to want to take Roger Clemens at this point? And Barry Bonds, it's not only just taking them on public relations grounds, but financially. There aren't that many teams that could afford a guy like Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
Who really can't play defense at this point in his career. So, you can't put this guy in the outfield. I'm sorry, he just can't. He can't play, and he doesn't seem to be able to play first base. So he's got to go to an American League team as a DH. If you sign him, he's going to want $15-20 million, I assume. And who's going to be able to pay that? Well, there's only a few teams, maybe Boston, maybe the Yankees, a couple of other teams out there. So it's the same with Clemens. You've got a very expensive player, and you have to wonder about the value you're going to get in return now at the age that they're at. So I would think that they're done.
Piggybacking on that question now, the Hall of Fame, do you think we've already seen sort of the backlash with Mark McGwire and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Palmeiro and stuff. What about these two guys? How do you think they're going to fare when the ballot comes around with their names on it for the Hall of Fame?
I think for right now, there's no way. I don't see either going in. It's an amazing thing to say this. I mean, think about it. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were both, forget steroids, the best players. Bonds was the best position player of the 1990s. Absolutely no question about it. No question about it. And Roger Clemens, if you take the period, say, from 1985 to 1995, and he was absolutely not juicing during any of that, was Major League Baseball's best pitcher. And both of these guys, they're not going to be in the Hall of Fame because of how screwed up our society is. I mean, really, that's what it is. American society has gotten to be so screwed up. Its whole sports ethos is so completely whacked, as my son's friends now say, that them learning the lingo. My son is 11. He's almost 12. And anyway, it's whack, man. It's whack. Not whacked. There's no ED at the end. It's just whack. These guys are going to pay the price because they're competing. The only thing that might change it, because social attitudes do change, and I imagine that by the time they're getting old and decrepit, there may be a kind of reaction against the idiocy of our current era. Because really, if I were voting, I would vote both of them in, because they both deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. And I have no problem saying that. And the other, Palmeiro, in my opinion, I would not vote in. Because in my opinion, Rafael Palmeiro was not a great player until he started juicing. It was very obvious with him. Not so with Bonds and Clemens. They were both just great. And so, I mean, we're not voting in Hall of Famers on the basis of how, what a nice citizen they are.
Yeah.
We're voting them in because they were great at what they did, I assume.
Looking at this year's playoffs now, it's time for the predictions part of the program here. We're getting predictions from everybody, so we'll see how you fare, and I'll be posting all the predictions at the after I air the episode. So I'll run down the categories here. It's just the divisions and the league championships and the World Series championships. So I'll start here with the American League East.
I predict Yankees over Red Sox. Yankees first, Red Sox second place.
Okay. American League Central.
God. Jesus, man. I'm trying to think. I'll say Minnesota because I always like them.
Wow, all right.
I'm a perennial Minnesota Twins fan.
Okay.
Believe it or not, they're my central team out there.
They seem to keep selling off all their
Yeah, but they're put together well. They've got good leadership out there. The Twins always find a way to surprise, so I'm just going to go out on a limb there and go for the Twins.
All right, sounds good. How about the American League West?
It's got to be the Angels. I have to say Los Angeles Angels.
All right, and the wild card?
Boston.
All right, sounds good. So no playoff hopes here for Detroit or Cleveland. That's surprising, but
well, Detroit needs pitching.
Yeah,
in my opinion, Detroit's got a great looking offense, and they could be surprising. But I'm going to say Angels, Twins, Yankees, Red Sox, and realistically, I could see the Red Sox in first place, but I just can't in good conscience do that. You have to understand.
There you go. That's fine.
I'm going with the Yankees over the Sox.
I'll have the same argument when I do my picks.
Right.
All right. Now the National League East. What do you think?
I'm going with Mets.
Okay.
I think that the Mets are they have been ready for a number of years. They look good. The Phillies also, at least they were good, pretty good last year. But I like the Mets, and I think they're going to go in. Maybe the Braves will surprise, but New York Mets in the East.
All right. National League Central.
Who cares? I'll say the Cubs. Cubbies.
Okay. Yeah, the National League Sellers, they like to call it. And the hotly contested National League West.
I'm going to hope and maybe think that the Dodgers might go in.
Okay. And the wild card for the National League.
I'm not that good at this, Tim. I'm going to say Padres.
Padres?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Take it back.
Okay.
Phillies.
Wow. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, Phillies.
And who'll be facing off in the World Series? The American League and the National League champions. Who do you see?
Yanks, baby. Yankees, led by the young stud Phillip Hughes, who's going to pitch the first game of the World Series, and it's going to be against the Mets. We're going to have a Subway Series in New York in 2008. You heard it here first.
Wow, awesome, good stuff. And who's going to
win in 6 games?
And who is that?
Yankees will win.
So
of course,
you're picking the Yankees to win the World Series.
They're going to beat the Mets in 6 games this year in the World Series.
All right, sounds good. There you go. Those are the predictions. The pained predictions from Richard Dolan. I'm going to have to keep all those sighs in the broadcast.
I'm going to be afraid to hear this in October.
Well,
you're going to send me an MP3 and you're going to have a clip, and these are, my really sucky predictions.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, to look at all the different predictions from the people and see how it shakes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty much it for the baseball talk. What do you have coming up? Anything you want to plug? Any appearances or, any good stuff that you want to talk about?
I've actually, if I can slip into the UFO mode again, I've been, as I said, working very hard at my next book. I'm doing a presentation at the X Conference run by Stephen Bassett, which will be in the Gaithersburg, Maryland Hilton, not too far from Washington, D.C., and I have reason to think that can be a very interesting conference. He's got some insiders, government insiders, members of the so-called aviary. They're going to be speaking there. I'll be talking about a variation of exopolitics in a new key, is I think what I'm going to probably call it. I'm not someone who's really done a lot of talk about so-called exopolitics. I've really held it at arm's length for many, many years, but I've been thinking about the implications of dealing with, let's say, them, if there are others on this world who are hanging out here, and I believe that is the case. What does it mean for us as a society to be dealing with them in an open way if that ever happens? And I have a feeling the reason that I'm a little more distant from a lot of the people who talk about exopolitics is that I have a very different perspective, I think, on what that means. And so I think I'll be talking about that next month in Gaithersburg. In short, I don't have a particularly optimistic opinion about our ability to deal with the reality of non-humans on this planet. I think that we're not really ready to do so. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to disclose the truth, because I'm a believer until the day I die in the value of truth over falsehood. But we're dealing with a very one thing that I've has occurred to me when I think about the interaction of human beings with this very bizarre reality of non-human intelligence here is that we don't deal with them on terms of equality in any way. And so if we're going to try to establish relations, as some people in the exopolitics camp want to do, it's not clear to me how we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I've got a few other conferences that are scheduled. I'll be speaking in McMinnville, Oregon, in May. This is all on my website at keyholepublishing.com.
There you go.
So you can just go check that out. And then I'll be in San Jose at the Conspiracy Conference in June. I'll be comparing UFO conspiracy theories with 9/11 conspiracy theories. There aren't that many UFO researchers who deal with 9/11, and there are absolutely no 9/11 researchers, maybe other than Jim Mars, who deals with UFOs.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in both of those, and I'll be talking at those in San Jose. I'll be in Roswell in July for the annual summer conference they have there, and there may be a couple of other places.
Awesome. And people can find all those dates and stuff and the information at keyholepublishing.com. That's your website.
That's correct. That's my website, so go check it out. I haven't been updating this website with new writing by myself for a long time, and for anyone who's been – a few people mention this to me from time to time, and all I can say is, look, I'm sorry. I'm trying to finish my book. I don't really want to do articles or blogs or anything like that. There's a lot of things that I have opinions on that I'd be happy to chat about, but all of that takes time away from my book. I want to get that done.
Exactly, yeah. And everyone's pressuring you to finish the book, so I can imagine that you just want to hurry up and finish it up now at this point.
That is all I want to do.
Yeah. Well, Rich, thank you very much for coming on the show for the baseball special. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can have you back here later on in the spring to do a esoteric discussion on UFOs, 9/11, and all that good stuff. Sounds like you have some great opinions, and I definitely want to talk to you again soon, have you back on the show.
I would be very interested to do that, Tim, absolutely.
Awesome. So we'll have to set something like that up in a few weeks. But like I said, thank you very much for coming on the baseball special. I really appreciated it, and I'm sure the baseball fans and the listening audience are going to enjoy your opinions on all things baseball. So thank you again for coming back.
My pleasure. I bet you'll have a lot of interested people wanting to hear baseball opinions by UFO geeks like us.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
We move on now to our next guest here on the BoA Audio Baseball Special. He's batting cleanup here, and that's a good spot for him because he's a power hitter. He's the author of the outstanding book, The Prankster and the Conspiracy, and also The Beast of Adam Gorightly, which is a compiling of his best-of writings. He's also the host of the Untamed Dimensions podcast program. He's prolific. He's been on BoA Audio several times now. He was on in Season 1 for just a standard interview, and he was on last year's baseball special, and he's back here this year for the baseball special. He is the crackpot historian himself, Adam Gorightly. Adam, welcome back to the show.
Timmy, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back. What have you been up to in the last year since the last time we talked to you? What's been going on for Gorightly between baseball opening days?
Well, several different writing projects. I'm about done with a book on James Shelby Downard I might have mentioned to you years ago. I've been working on it for a few years now. He, of course, was the famous conspiracy theorist and author of the King Kill 33 theory, which presented, this theory that the JFK assassination was part of a dastardly Freemasonic conspiracy orchestrated on the 33rd latitude.
Oh, wow. When's that coming out?
Pretty soon. It's basically done. I'm working with a fellow. He's going to write a foreword. The artwork is done for it. I'm kind of shopping it around to a few publishers, but if that doesn't pan out, I'll publish it myself. So hopefully in a few months, we'll see. It'll get published one way or another. Yeah,
that sounds awesome, because I read the Michael Hoffman book, and he had a chapter in there on that 33 King Kill theory, it always resonated with me. I wanted to know more about it. So
basically, Downard and Hoffman were co-authors of that work, King Kill 33.
Is Downard still around, or did he die?
No, he died about 10 years ago, and that was one of the interesting parts of the research. For many years, I really doubted that he actually existed.
Really?
And the deeper I looked into it, the more I doubted even more and more that he ever actually existed. But then I finally chased some leads down and discovered that he did exist. Popular rumor for years was that he was a kind of a composite creation by several different authors like Hoffman and William Grimstead and Adam Parfrey. I think I'd almost convinced myself that that was the case, but then, I got towards the end of the book and I told myself, you got to really find out for sure, if he did or didn't exist. And I was ready even to take a trip out to Memphis to look around, but then I was able to get enough information to convince me that he was actually a living, breathing human being. Quite a fascinating character.
So is the book on him or the King Kill theory, or just the whole, or is it kind of like the prankster and conspiracy book where it's kind of like both?
It's kind of a little bit of both. There is biographical background, but I could only find so much about him through different, because he, in a sense, was kind of reclusive. He traveled around the country in an Airstream trailer going to paranormal sites and all this type of stuff. And he had a few friends here and a few friends there, and I interviewed like Hoffman and William Grimstead and other people he knew. So, there is some biographical material and stuff that also comes from his books about his early youth growing up as a patsy of Freemasonry, as he described himself. And then I basically take a lot of his theories and run with them,
Yeah.
just to compare them with things going on today, like 9/11. So that's kind of the take on the book. And it's a rather, it'll be a slim volume, maybe I think it weighs out around 30,000 words or so.
Nice. We got to keep me in the loop on that, because I'm fascinated by the King Kill theory, and I definitely want to have you on the show when the book comes out.
I'll get you a copy. Then I want to mention I'm also doing an updated version of my book on the Manson family.
Nice.
Which I hope it damn well better be available by next year, 2009. That's the 40th anniversary. So I want to roll it out for that and sell some more copies. This will have some new information, and it'll be a little leaner and meaner than the first edition, just because that was such a big book, 600 pages, and ended up costing quite a bit. So I'm going to trim it down, make it lean and mean, and throw a few new things in there. So that's coming up. Then
nice.
On my doorstep today, I got the new edition of Paranoia magazine, which I have an article co-written with my friend Douglas Hawes entitled The Tuesday Weld Psychedelic Illuminati Conspiracy.
Wild. Yeah, I know. We talked about the Tuesday Weld story before. It's really a weird one. There's been a lot going on here in the baseball off-season. Is there anything that really stood out to you that we should dive into first? Anything that really piqued your interest? I know you have sort of an askew view of the world, so maybe something I hadn't even thought of yet.
Oh, it's just been a mess with all this, the Roger Clemens circus and, and the Barry Bonds stuff. That's been the most interesting for me during the off season. As far as my team, the Giants, they're looking pretty pathetic. They really haven't done much to improve their lot here in the last few years. They kind of mortgaged their future banking on Barry Bonds to, win a World Series, and that never happened. So the organization itself is kind of in shambles. I was reading somewhere there's some baseball insiders or experts. They rated all the teams in the major leagues, looking at the whole organization from their farm clubs up to the big team, and a lot of these experts placed the Giants as the worst organization in baseball.
Oh, man, that sucks. Wow, even worse than the Florida teams?
Yeah, so we can only go up.
There you go. How did things get so bad for them? Because, you think – I just don't understand, how some of these teams can go so far off the rails. But they invest all the money in bonds?
They did. They were going for the short term, so they traded a lot of their up-and-coming young players to bring in veterans to surround Bonds, and that worked when they made the World Series. And a couple of years after that, they had some good teams, but then they hit a point of diminishing returns, and they ended up with a bunch of quite a few, veterans with not a lot left in the tank. And, towards the end, Bonds didn't have that much either,
Yeah, and it seemed like the Barry Zito signing, he was signed for quite a lot of money, and I don't know how well he really fared last year for the Giants.
He had a pretty lackluster season. He was around 500, I think, in wins, maybe less. And this year he started off slow, I believe, with some of the spring training games. So he hasn't fared too well yet,
Yeah, and that's surprising considering you moved from the American League to the National League. You think you do a lot better.
But the bright spots they have, the few bright spots, are some very good young pitching. Matt Cain, he's an up-and-comer, and I see him like a future Nolan Ryan or Roger Clemens. His record last year wasn't that great, but he didn't get a lot of run support. They got another guy named Tim Lipscomb.
Oh, yeah.
He's a good young pitcher. So if they could get some decent position players, but right now they have, their roster, they really have no power hitting, and they have a bunch of old vets that were good 5 or 6 years ago, like Rich Aurelia and Ray Durham, and, Omar Vizquel is still fun to watch, but, yeah, he's no spring chicken.
Yeah, no kidding. From what I kind of saw on the Bonds coverage, it sounds like San Francisco is like the bizarro world where, like, everywhere else he goes, he's pretty hated, but there they still like him a lot. Was that sort of the mood there this past season when he was chasing the record?
Yeah, but then once I think he got the record, then people started care less about him, and he was surprised that they didn't bring him back for another season. But the last season where he broke the record, that was the only reason they brought him back, was to fill the seats, because they knew they would with him chasing and breaking that record.
Yeah. Now, did you get a chance to go to any of those games?
No, I haven't even been to their new stadium, which they've had for several years now. I used to go to a lot of the Candlestick games, so I must admit I haven't. The most recent games, I go out to see the Dodgers play now and then when Greg Bishop will invite me. So, yeah, I hear what I've seen of the new park there in San Francisco. It's wonderful. Just haven't made it yet.
What did you think of the whole Mitchell report and everything and the Clemens circus? You kind of alluded to it already, but what did you think of all that?
Pretty comical. Clemens made himself look like an ass. I don't know what he was expecting he was going to get out of that. It's just a head scratcher, but it was comical. He was parading the flag around and saying, pitched for the USA team, and I'm a great hero and all this, and here you are dragging me through the mud, and but
yeah, it was kind of weird.
Yeah, it'll all blow away, and we'll move on with things. And it was just a period where, in baseball, where that was going on, and it wasn't just Bonds and Clemens. And of course, Clemens now Bonds looks a hell of a lot better after Clemens made such of an ass of himself. But it was pretty widespread and prevalent. It is what it is. That they people that's turned their heads from the management of baseball, commissioners, whatever. There was some years where they were making a lot of money, and the long ball was going on, and now it's come back to roost.
Now, were you always a Giants fan? Did you grow up in the area and that kind of thing, and became a fan that way?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I'm in Central California, so yeah, Giants fan, and the Niners, and actually big NBA fan, more of a Lakers fan, but I go see Golden State Warriors games now and then, so yeah, I was a big sports fan.
Now, I remember last year, I don't know if I asked you this last year or not, but I know Bishop had had a sort of a National League, American League bias where he was anti-DH and all that stuff. How do you feel about that sort of thing, where the comparison, it seems like the National League doesn't get as much respect as the American League because, I don't know why exactly. Maybe because the scores are lower or something. I'm not sure.
I don't mind the DH. It's been around for so long now. You get used to these things when they start bringing in new rules and stuff. A lot of the traditionalists get a little upset, but I was watching baseball as a lad, and it was back in the early 70s with the Oakland A's, and they were real innovative, and it kind of came out of that period with Charlie Finley. That's, when they started, he was the first really owner that allowed his players to wear long hair, and they had these colorful uniforms. I think they even tried these bright orange baseballs, and they were one of the first teams really that started having the night games. So that that kind of innovation came out of that period. So I grew up with it, and I like the designated hitter. It helps different players extend their careers. Who knows? It might help Bonds extend his career. You never know.
Do you think he'll end up playing again, or you think he's all done?
Well, in fact, that was going to be my first prediction this year, is that Barry Bonds will, mark my words, will make a comeback mid-season. He'll sign with the New York Mets, but then shortly afterwards his head will explode on national television due to his continued use of performance-enhancing drugs.
Wow, that's a bold prediction. I like it, though.
I have another prediction.
Let's hear it.
I predict that Sean David Morton will actually make a prediction this year that comes true. But not only that.
Yeah.
This will be the year of UFO disclosure.
Oh, wow, okay.
But when it happens, nobody will care, except for the 200 or so saucer buffs that go to all these UFO conventions.
What will everybody else do?
They don't care. It's, a big deal. There's other things. We got the economy, all these foreclosures to worry about. What can the UFO knots do for us?
Oh man! Now, do you have any sort of rival teams? I know the Giants kind of have a rivalry with the A's, but do you? And I know, of course, with the Bishop thing.
Well, yeah. It's less now with free agencies because the players move back and forth, and on the Giants, you have a bunch of ex-Dodgers and vice versa.
Yeah.
So there's less of it. I remember I really hated the frickin' Dodgers, especially it was like the when was that? Early 90s. Bonds had first come to the team, and the Giants had a great season that year. They won 100 games, and it came down to the last day of the season, and they needed to win the game, and they were playing the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, it went right to the end of the game, the last hit, and the Dodgers won, and Tommy Lasorda, that fat little fuck, was running around, jumping up and down, and I despised him ever since. So I have a hatred for the Dodgers, But it's harder to keep that going these days with all the free agency. It's like you see it going on with the Red Sox and Yankees. The center fielder there from the Red Sox went to the Yankees. I forget his name.
Johnny Damon.
Yeah, so it's not like it used to be.
Yeah. I was reading an interview with Bob Dylan actually, and they asked him something like that about who his favorite baseball player was. He's a big baseball fan too, and he was saying the same thing you are pretty much about free agency. And he said, nowadays you're really just cheering for the uniform. So
right.
That's about the only thing that doesn't change.
Where in the past you had players, they'd spend, their whole career on the same team. You very rarely see that anymore,
Yeah, that's one of the really hard parts about baseball and all sports, really, because, you get attached to a guy and then their contract comes up and they leave. So it's disappointing.
Yeah.
So you're not really a big Dodgers fan, so how do you feel about Joe Torre coming out there to be the new coach?
Actually, that's pretty cool, I'm glad Torre ended up somewhere. I thought he was a really classy dude, and he'll probably do well with them. The Dodgers look pretty good going into this season, I hate to say. So it's hard for me not to root for Joe Torre, you know, especially all he's gone through working for that asshole, you know, the Steinbrenner and overcoming cancer and all these things. He's always been a class dude, you know.
Yeah.
Win, lose or draw.
Yeah, he was one of the few guys on the Yankees, in the Yankee organization.
That you could stomach?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I didn't mind that much.
Yeah.
The rest of them I could give or take pretty let me see. What else could I ask you about here that,
You want me to give my predictions for this year?
Yeah, let's just, we'll dive into the predictions. So let me go down the list here. Well, for you, since you're National League, we'll start in the National League. So.
Well, let me say, first of all, I gave this a lot of thought about these predictions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And why don't we start with the National League West, and I'll tell you how I came up with my predictions. You know, I started thinking about the Giants, you know, and how they're going to stink again this year.
Yeah.
And, you know, so the Dodgers are looking like one of the teams to beat, you know, in the National League West, but you know, it's against my nature to root for the Dodgers in any shape or form, you know, because I hate them and all they stand for with, like we talked before, the mind control stuff last year and that Greg Bishop's involved in.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I was thinking about these predictions. It seems I never do worth a crap when I try to predict who will win.
Mm-hmm.
So, I might as well go with the Giants because that's the logical choice not to go with. Because, you know, I'm going to pull a George Costanza. You ever see that episode of Seinfeld where he did the opposite?
Yeah, there you
Remember
go.
that? Because he did the opposite of what he would normally do because nothing ever worked out right for him anyway. So, you know, why not do the total opposite? Like when ordering food, instead of a hamburger, get a salad, or instead of beer, get wine, see how it comes out. So that's going to be my approach here. Pick the team least likely to succeed, and then, you know, see if I do better than the other UFO wackos you've had on predicting who will be the winners and losers this year. So anyway, in the NL West, we'll go with the Giants, and then let's go with the National League East. I have to go with the Florida Marlins. So pencil those in.
All right.
Pencil them in. In the Central, let's go Pittsburgh Pirates were in the hole last year. They had the worst record in the Central, so we'll go with them. So I have in the National League, San Francisco in the West, the Pirates in the Central Division, and Florida in the East.
All right, now what about the wild card?
Oh, shit, I forgot about that. Let's go with the Washington. What do they call themselves? Not the Senators.
The Nationals.
The Nationals. We'll go with the Washington Nationals in the wild card.
Wow, so it's like a whole black sheep contingent here of teams. I like it.
You watch this. One of these teams is going to come out of there and we'll go, man, that Gorightly, he's a genius.
All right, now the American League.
American League East, the Baltimore Orioles.
All right, there you go.
Fuck Boston and New York. The Central, Minnesota was kind of in the middle of the pack. I have a feeling about them. We'll go with the Minnesota Twins. They actually were around 500 last year, so. And then what do we look in the American League West? Texas Rangers.
Wow. All right. That's bold. Okay, and then the wild card?
Let's go with Toronto.
All right, nice. Okay. You may sneak that one in, though, the Toronto. That one may turn out to be the correct prediction. They're a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
And so who do you see facing off for the championship here, the American League versus National League? Who's going to win their respective league championships?
In the World Series, we'll have the Texas Rangers against the San Francisco Giants. And the Giants will prevail.
Nice. Okay.
Seven-game series.
I hope so. That would be nice. Too many sweeps nowadays. Have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Way too many sweeps. Last year's postseason only saw like maybe one series go to 7. That was the Red Sox Cleveland one, which is disappointing because you want to enjoy the playoff games, and you only get 4 of them. Sometimes you only get 3 for the first round. So you miss 1 or 2 of them. Next thing you know, you miss the whole Cubs playoff run.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, who was predicting Colorado to be in the World Series last year, or in the, division championships?
Nobody.
Or did they make the World Series?
They did make the World Series, yeah.
They got swept in 4, right?
Yeah.
Who the hell were predicting them? They just got on a roll, so.
Exactly. So there's a chance here for the Giants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, you already talked about your hatred for Tommy Lasorda. Did you manage to see that he got to manage a game here in the springtime recently?
Yeah, I heard a bit about that, and they had a lot of big fanfare for him, and I guess they crossed their bats, and he ran across from third to home plate. I guess they split squads, and one was playing in Japan or something. So
yeah, China or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, was that crossed bats some kind of symbolic occult reference, you think?
I think so. We've talked about this before. He's deep into all that mind control, Illuminati, one world order, L.A. Dodgers stuff.
That might explain how they got Joe Torre then.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of power brokering going on there.
Yeah, exactly what's going on with him.
What do you have coming up down the line? I know you're intimately involved here with the UFO Retro, so the UFO RetroCon. Talk a little bit about that and what else you have coming up, that you want to mention, maybe other speaking engagements, stuff like that, that people should be made aware of.
Yeah, that's the main thing coming up. Retro UFO, April 26th and 27th in Landers, California, at the world-famous Integratron. And, you can join myself and a whole bunch of cool people. Greg Bishop will be there, Barbara Lamb, Nick Redfern, Ralph Ring, Chica Bruce, Paul Kimball, Guy Malone, the list goes on and on, Ken Thomas, even Zamora the Torture King, to name but a few, in what has been billed as not your typical UFO convention. And, people can go to retroufo.com. Originally, I was slated to speak there, and I've been helping bring in some of the speakers for this event, and we really ended up overbooking, so I kind of pulled myself out as far as speaking, but I will be actually performing some music there with my friend Joe Hook, and we have about 6-7 songs we're going to play, various wacky UFO songs. I'm going to bust out the theremin, and for this gig, we've actually formed a band, and we're calling ourselves Good News for Modern Man.
Nice. I didn't know you were a musician. What do you play?
Mm-hmm. I play keyboards.
Nice.
And, there'll be some cool stuff going on. Of course, if your listeners don't know the background, it's at the Integratron, which, they could go to the Integratron.com and find out more about that freaky structure. But, the whole idea behind this conference, Retro, is kind of looking back at some of the great conferences they had out there at Giant Rock, which is a couple miles from the Integratron, back in the early 50s through the 70s, when George Van Tassel, who channeled some aliens, and that's why he built the Integratron as a sort of alien rejuvenation chamber, and part of that, to help fund his various projects, he started having these UFO conferences back in the day, and you'd have all those legendary contactees, George Adamski and George Hunt Williamson, and on, showing up at these, they call them the spacecraft conventions and the Giant Rock spacecraft conventions. And at the height of that, you'd get 5,000 to 7,000 people out at these things,
wow,
which is mind-blowing. Think of a regular UFO convention today. Get a couple hundred people, you're happy.
Yeah.
And this is out in the middle of the desert, so there's not a lot of creature comforts out there.
Yeah. Wow. So you guys kind of like carrying on the tradition here, reviving the Integratron as a conference location, huh?
Mm-hmm. And there'll be there's not an organized trip out to Giant Rock, but the way we're setting it up, basically we'll have Robert Short, who's one of the old school contactees. He's going to be going out at a certain time. So if you want to meet Bob out there, carpool, and he'll show you around Giant Rock. And then the main speakers and different performers, that'll all be going on there at the Integratron.
Before we wrap it up, talk about your podcast, because I think it just started, within the last year or so. I don't even remember if you had it up and running last time you were on the show. So tell people about the podcast and where they can find out about that and stuff and listen to it.
Let me think. I started it November of 2006.
Oh, wow, yeah. So about 6 months before you came on last time for the baseball show.
Yeah, and I've probably done about 40 or 50 episodes. I was amazed the other day. I was going back and, looking at all the interviews I've done, quite a few now. The original intent when I started doing that was basically to interview a lot of people I always wanted to talk to about some strange experiences they've had, whether UFO sightings, paranormal stuff, and basically create a forum where I could interview a lot of people that I've always wanted to interview and use a lot of this material for a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I still plan to do that, and I'd probably call it Untamed Dimensions, and it'd be some of my own personal experiences and the experiences of these folks,
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the main intent. Somewhere along the line, occasionally, I think I lost focus of that, and which is okay. And I'd have different people approaching me to be on the show, so I started interviewing people that might not necessarily fit the MO of someone I wanted to interview. I knew that had strange experiences, but that's okay. So, and I had a lot of interesting folks recently. I was another one of those people. I got sent a book by some PR group that representing the astronaut Edgar Mitchell. They did a reissue of his book, The Way of the Explorer.
Mm-hmm.
So I replied back, hey, I'd love to have him as a guest on my show. And what do you know? Interviewing a ex-astronaut, which was pretty cool.
That's cool.
That was a recent one. So, and then I've explored a lot of strange areas. It's like this whole Tuesday Well, the Illuminati conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
That turned into a multi-part show interviewing the characters, and I do mean characters who, were promulgating these theories. And so, yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I kind of look at it as a, education, learning experience.
Nice.
And I don't know how long I intend to continue doing it. We'll see. One thing, I get a lot of comments about the audio quality of the show. I get a lot of positive stuff about great guests and all this type of stuff, but the audio quality isn't the greatest. So I think at some point here in the near future, I will probably take a break. It might be an extended one and kind of regroup and get it set up so the show has better audio quality and these type of things. I found also that it kind of has taken away from my writing.
Yeah.
Because it does take time. It's not okay. You just do an interview and it's an hour out of maybe once a week. There's the prep that goes with it. I'm sure you're aware of all of this, the scheduling of the thing, all these the editing afterwards, all of these things take time, which take time away from other things, and maybe I don't want to spend as much time, doing the web radio show as I should be doing whatever, writing, playing music. It's all,
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
choices you make.
Yep.
But I've enjoyed it. It's been a hell of a lot of fun.
Well, Adam, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show for the baseball special. I really appreciate it. I think I'll probably look at the the actual content. Maybe we talk more about paranormal than baseball, but that's fine because we need to pump up the paranormal content a little bit.
Right on, and we'll have you on my show here sometime in the near future, right?
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to do it. It would be a lot of fun. And keep me, like I said, keep me in the loop on both those books because I've become really fascinated with the Manson family lately, and I've been looking for a good book on the Manson family. I didn't have a copy of your book, so but I guess I'll wait till the new reissue comes out. Otherwise, I would be, I'd be behind the curve. So
hey, I'll get you a copy of both.
Nice, and we'll definitely do an interview on that because I've been really fascinated with the Manson story for quite a while now, and I wanted to delve into it. So, and a lot of people want to hear you back on Binnall of America. I've got a lot of requests to get you back on the show. So it's only a matter of time before we reconnect again for another esoteric discussion.
Right on.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
We're here now with our fifth batter in the all-star lineup of the BoA Audio Baseball Special. He was on just a few short weeks ago, really, the beginning of February, so it's exciting to bring him back, and we came right down to the wire here, but we have so much to talk about. His team's seen a real resurgence in the last year, and I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about that. He is, of course, one half of the tremendously awesome UFO Mystic website, one of the best websites out there. Go there for your UFO news. It's updated pretty much every day, I believe, at least once a day. Has the best UFO news out there. It's where I go to get my UFO news. It's UFO Mystic. And, of course, he's the author of the tremendous book, Project Beta, which we talked about at length quite a while ago, and maybe someday we'll rehash the whole Project Beta story, because I kind of interviewed him back when I was just a scrappy young lad, and I probably can bring some new questions to the table on Project Beta. Irregardless of all that, our guest here is, of course, the esteemed Greg Bishop. Greg, welcome back to the show.
Oh, I'm esteemed. Thanks.
Yeah, you like that? And I should point out that earlier in the show, Paul Kimball called you one of the nicest person he's met in the UFO world.
I don't know if I like that, but,
I guess we'll pass that along to Kimball.
No, you know what? He stayed here for about a week and a half, and we had a lot of fun. It's unfortunate it wasn't during the baseball season, so he'll be out here for the Retro Conference about a week after that. I think there will be some Dodger games, and we're going to go.
Nice. I'm jealous already. We kind of scratched the surface on it at the end of the last interview, and I was kind of chomping at the bit to ask you. And now that we're here at the second annual baseball special, we can dig into the big off season for your LA Dodgers. It must be exciting for you because you've been supporting this team through thick and thin for quite a while now, and all of a sudden, they're the hot team now going into 2008. They're one of the hot teams. So I guess talk a little bit about, Joe Torre coming to the Dodgers and, of course, the Andrew Jones signing as well. It kind of fall under the radar. But those two big changes for the Dodgers in the offseason and what you're looking forward to here in 08.
I did not realize that people thought that the Dodgers were the hot team. Now, the fans of the Dodgers, actually, they did some sort of survey. And during one of the spring training games I was watching, this graphic appeared on the screen. How many games do you think the Dodgers should win this year? It was like 60 to 80, and about 20% of the people voted for that. 80 to 90, maybe another 30% of the people voted for that. No, not even that. But whatever the percentages were, the people that expected the Dodgers to win over 93 games or something like that, or 90 games, was something like 85. It was a little over 80%.
Wow.
There's a lot of expectation. And I think that's mainly because of what you said, the signings of Joe Torre and Andrew Jones. And I was looking at the spring training records, which they always say they don't mean anything,
Yeah.
The Dodgers have one of the worst spring training records this year.
Oh, no. Well,
it might even be worse than, I think it's either the Devil Rays or the Marlins. And I think it's the Devil Rays have like almost the same bad record for this spring. No, I don't, people don't say it means anything, but all the teams that were good last year are still good. The Yankees have a great record, spring training record. The Sox, of course. Even Chicago has a decent one. The Cubs, I mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have high expectations. I have hopes. I'm glad everybody thinks it's that they're going to do real well. I think so too. And I think, you know what, it's really weird. My hope is a lot higher than my think. After following this team for, not a whole hell of a long time, maybe 10 or 12 years, I get this fatalism where you get to this point where you protect your emotions by saying, well, nothing's going to happen anyway. So that you're surprised and delighted when something does happen and it turns out great.
Yeah.
Which it does, it does more often than not for the Dodgers. I guess I have to admit it. Although last year they kind of dropped in the second half. They had the best record in baseball, I think, up to the break, or close to it. And then after that, they went into tailspin. Or actually, in the last month or two, they went into tailspin. They were in first place in the Western Division. They ended up in fourth place.
Oh man!
At the end of the season.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
And it was, everybody was talking about the clubhouse atmosphere and all that, and it's always that question of, does chemistry beget winning, or does winning beget chemistry? It's a chicken and the egg thing. But I tend to think that winning begets chemistry. At least get along with everybody. Then when you start winning, the chemistry comes.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of dawned on me, too, the same way with the Dodgers becoming the hot team. It seemed like, probably because the Torrey signing was so long ago, really, in real time now, that, everyone was sort of excited when it happened. Then there was, the steroid thing and everything everyone kind of forgot that there was going to be another baseball season coming. And then, I was watching ESPN last night, and Tim Kukurchin, who's pretty much my favorite guy on Baseball Tonight, he's the one I respect the most, he picked the Dodgers to win the NL West. So I was like, this isn't just me and the UFO folks who are on the baseball special. It's kind of sweeping around baseball. So it is pretty exciting to see that rejuvenation. It reminds me a lot of the Cubs last year when Pinella came aboard and people sort of thought they'd turn it around. Now, what sort of intangible do you think that Torrey is going to bring to this team that's going to turn them, into a playoff team, in one season? Because I know you said there was this clubhouse strife, but I sort of only know it from the peripheral end. You probably know it because you're right there in the heart of the city and stuff. But what do you think he's going to bring that's going to turn this team around?
About that clubhouse fighting between the younger and the older players?
Yeah.
I have a very sneaking suspicion that was something like 75-80% media created.
So that's usually the way it is too. It seems.
Yeah, I think that they probably did fall apart over generational or age lines.
Yeah.
But the thing was that I think that Grady Little, such an easygoing guy, that he probably just kind of let it, whatever happened. He didn't kind of, call everybody in the room and say, look here, dudes.
Yeah.
Like Tommy Lasorda used, he'd actually say, look here. If he thought they were doing badly, he'd tell them in no uncertain terms. And if he thought they were doing great, he'd tell them in no uncertain terms as well. He got criticized for running on the field and jumping and screaming when they won.
Yeah.
Which I think is stupid. Not running on the field, but being criticized for that. Whatever you may say about Lasorda, he was good baseball mind, great baseball mind, still is, and probably one of the best managers ever. Just because of the way, you know what a manager does? They create chemistry. A good one does.
Yeah.
Through just managing personalities. That's why I was in management a long time ago, like, when I was just out of college. I was at a job for a year and they put me in management. And after a while, people said that they liked me best as a manager, basically because I stayed out of everybody's way. And when there was a problem, tried to get involved and not confrontational with people, unless they were confrontational. And, that's a really small microcosm of what a baseball manager has to do. He's taking, at the time of the game, 15 or 20 egos and trying to juggle them.
Yeah.
And if you can do that effectively, then it's like tuning, doing little tune-ups on a machine. And I think Torrey is generally recognized as being a good person at doing that, and that's really what the Dodgers needed at the end of last year. Clubhouse chemistry or not, I mean, everything that goes into making a team what it is, the manager is there daily, and he probably has the most important role in doing that. And Torrey being there, I think, will help that quite a bit because he doesn't take any crap from people.
Yeah, and what's the pitching situation like for the Dodgers? Are they strong in that department?
Yeah, they're looking really strong. I mean, of course, Brad Penny's coming back, which, unequivocally people say he's probably one of the best pitchers right now. They got Derek Lowe and a Boston pickup from a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
You know what? Vlad Guerrero got a home run off him yesterday in the exhibition game down in Anaheim. There's an Anaheim game yesterday, 3 Boston games, one today at Dodger Stadium, one tonight, one tomorrow at the Coliseum, which is something we could talk about, and then on Sunday they're playing them at Dodger Stadium, which I actually have tickets for it, and I wanted to go see them play Boston because I haven't seen that since there was an interleague game about 5 years ago out here.
What do you think merits discussion on the Coliseum? You sound excited about this, just that they're playing the game there, or what?
Yeah, well, do you know why they're playing the game there? From it being a big stunt.
No, I'm on the team. I figured it was just one of those things to, as a creative sort of thing at the end of between the spring and the regular season, like this Japan trip.
That's probably the main reason for it. But it's the 50th year anniversary of the Dodgers coming to L.A.
Oh.
And in 58. And until 1961 or 62 or something like that, they played at the Coliseum, the L.A. Coliseum, where they used to have the Rose Bowls till they moved it to the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. Way back when, because it's right next to USC there. They actually took one end of the field and turned it into a baseball field, and it was built for the Olympics. I forget when 1920-something Olympics.
Weird.
So it's a track and field stadium, but they didn't have their stadium finished yet. They were still building Dodger Stadium. So for 3 or 4 seasons, they played in the LA Memorial Coliseum. They blocked off one end of the field. Well, not blocked off, but they some groundskeepers went out and made it into a baseball field. And the thing seats like 110,000 or something.
Yeah, it's a pretty massive place.
Yeah, I went to a Rolling Stones concert there once, and there was over 100,000 people there. It was frightening.
Yeah, wow, that would be pretty weird. So which games are you going to? You're going to go to that one?
No, I couldn't get tickets for it. It sold out in like an hour or two.
100,000 tickets sold out, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, at least according to Ticketmaster and the Dodgers and all that, of course, there's a lot of, people are auctioning them on eBay and Hub and stuff like that. And I could have gotten some if I wanted to pay, a couple $100 for a pair of tickets way up in the nosebleeds at the other end of the stadium.
Wow, I hope they televise that game, because I bet it's going to be.
Well, they're going to televise. Well, I guess MLB TV will, but the local stations here are going to televise it. And it's funny because one end of the field and the edge of the track was where home plate was. Left field they had to put up a fence, like the 60-something foot high fence, because the thing was only 220 feet or something from home plate. And the right field went, for 100 yards to the right. They had these huge crowds. They did get, 80, 100,000 a couple times for games there.
Wow.
And, it was just a strange, weird, chapter in the Dodgers history, at least as far as where they played. Everybody thinks Dodger Stadium, first it's Ebbets Field, then they moved to Dodger Stadium. No, for 2 or 3 years they played in the Coliseum.
Yeah, that's I think they did that sort of thing with the Florida team too. They were playing where the Dolphins play or something like that for a while. And the Washington team too, when they first moved to Washington, weren't they playing like at a football stadium? Yeah, I think so. And for the longest, the Padres, San Diego, they built their stadium in the 60s, I think, late 60s. I can't remember when they turned from a Pacific League team into a Major League team. Actually, Ted Williams started out on the San Diego, not the Padres, I think. I think they were called the Padres back then, but they were a Pacific League team. But they built that stadium. It was called Padres Stadium, I think, and then it was Jack Murphy Stadium, and now it's something else. But sometime in the 80s, they bowled it off, which I thought was a travesty, and the Chargers started playing there. Weird.
So actually, I went to a couple games there, where you could see the yard markings still on the field while it was a baseball field. It was kind of disconcerting. You can't play baseball in a bowl. That's ridiculous. The ends should be open, the outfield.
Yeah, that is weird. Yeah. Yeah, you can see the hash marks and stuff when I think the Red Sox played the Florida team a couple of years ago, and you can see like the lines and stuff on the field. It's like, this is get a real field. Jeez.
Yeah, well, there's a problem getting cities to pay for fields.
I know.
I think is a good. I mean, if the city shouldn't have to pay for something if they don't want it there, the people don't want to pay for it. I don't think baseball takes precedence over everybody in the entire city that may or may not want a team there.
You must be excited about Andrew Jones coming to the team. It seems like I said, that's kind of fallen under the radar, but I think he's going to have a pretty big year there.
Well, I hope he has a big year. He's not playing hurt like he was last year.
Yeah, he has. Didn't they sign him to just like a 2-year deal or something? He's kind of got something to prove here if he wants to. He thought he was going to be making huge bucks, but I mean, he's making more than you and I. I mean, let's be honest. But
he's making more than anybody on the team still.
Oh, really?
I think he does have the highest yearly salary. Yeah, look, here's the starting lineup. $14,100,000, Andrew Jones. The second on the list is $13 million, Rafael Furcal. Kent's only making $9 million. Poor Jeff Kent. And Nomar, $8.5 million.
Wow. That's a lot of money for Furcal. I think my brother's a big Furcal fan. He's pretty good, huh?
Yeah, he's for a shortstop, he's consistently good, and he's an incredible shortstop. I mean, I don't know how many Gold Gloves he's won, or if he has, but he should, from what I've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, the Gold Glove. I'm down on the Gold Glove. It's too. They need like some kind of term limits on the Gold Glove, because once one guy gets it, it seems like he never loses it, even though maybe he deserves to win like 30 Gold Gloves in a row, but it just kind of takes the steam out of it.
Yeah, you know what? I was listening to this Gene Shepard show. He was talking about he was a radio host in the 60s in New York. But he was talking about, people that win awards and everybody, pays attention to. If you're doing it in Kansas City, nobody really cares or even notices, no matter, if you're the best player, whatever, because nobody sees you and you never win. Your team never wins. But if you're doing it in New York or Boston or LA or maybe even San Francisco, Chicago, stuff like that, people notice. And that becomes it gets into people's heads and they don't think of other people.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the baseball writers, that they remember the person that's making the highlight reel plays and all that. And psychologically, that kind of, I don't think they look at stats that much. They can't. Otherwise, other people would be getting in there.
Yeah.
Getting their Gold Gloves and getting in the Hall of Fame and all that. It's very psychological and political as opposed to based on stats is what it should be. For the most part.
No, I totally agree with that. I totally agree. And my other pet peeve is the All-Star game. We need to change the voting somehow. And the one player, one team rule I don't like either. I mean, every team gets a player no matter what.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Even the guy who gets that, even the guy from Kansas City, unless he's like actually legitimately an All-Star, usually there's at least one or two dudes on the All-Star team that they only made it because they play for Baltimore or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it seems like the thing in kindergarten where there aren't any losers. Of course there's losers. There's always losers. Jesus.
Yeah, it's like everybody gets a trophy. It doesn't, it kind of dilutes the whole all-star thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how do you think the voting should be changed?
First, they have to take the voting out of the hands of the fans for the starting lineup or however, for the starting positions. With the internet, it's become farcical. And the big cities just dominate too much, and it never seems to really work out to my liking. And then I don't know how the rest of it goes because it's pretty convoluted. Because then, the coach picks some and the players pick some, and so I don't know. I need to actually take a better look at it before I nail my proposition to the wall.
Or you could be a Moneyball head and just say that do it on pure stats. That's it. I don't care who's popular or what.
Yeah, I mean that would be
start out
off.
Yeah,
exactly. See, I'm extra excited to have you on the show because we kind of beat a lot of the horses dead here earlier in the show with the steroid stuff and Girardi going to the Yankees. Were there any other off-season stuff outside of the Dodgers stuff that piqued your interest or that you want to have here on the record for the baseball special?
I don't pay any attention to stuff really in the off season. The off season thing that of course excited me was that Torre was coming to the Dodgers. I don't know whether he's still a great manager. He seems like it, but every time they talk to him here in LA, it seems like, well, I'm still juggling lineups and stuff, and we'll have to see what happens. That's what he's been saying all through spring training and. So, what the biggest off-season thing was the steroid report, obviously.
Yeah, what did you think of all that, with Clemens getting all mixed up into it and the new congressional hearings and all the craziness that went on? What did you take out of all that?
You know what? It's funny. It's really polarizing, the steroid issue. Some people are like, yeah, so what? Whatever advantage you can have to, why not give everybody steroids? And then on the other side, there's people that I tend to more agree with saying, somebody's really good, they try to make themselves better, or, they're still good and they're trying to stay up there. You know what? To me, if I got to come down on one side or the other, yeah, it is cheating. And the people know it is because they have to do it in secret, and they're sneaking around behind everybody's back, and they're ordering stuff on the phone and having it sent to their mother's house, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, to me it gives the people with the drugs an unfair advantage, and apart from that, it screws up their body. It screws up your body. It ages you faster. It induces physiological changes, which are. I don't even think people know exactly yet what happens to you in old age if you're doing, steroids for, 20 years or 10 years or whatever.
Yeah. Well, look at all those dead professional wrestlers. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think they should get it out of baseball and level the playing field, as it were, back to where, if somebody's doing well, they're just doing well. It was funny when the report came out, the Dodgers immediately the same day on their website said, no current Dodgers involved in steroid scandal. No current, but there were, Eric Gagne and who was the catcher that went to the Mets. I think he's in Florida now. There was 2 or 3 people on the Dodgers that were involved in it too.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to have affected. I can't remember the catcher's name. They traded him away to the Mets.
I think I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name either.
God, I'm real bad. My brain's getting to the point where unless I read or heard of something that day or the day before, it kind of leaves my consciousness. But suffice it to say that, I think it was present on just about every team. And it was so funny to see the basic Mark McGuire replay. Well, it wasn't really a replay with Clemens. He was just like, no, I never did. No.
Yeah.
McGuire took the advice of his lawyer and just said he refused to comment, which, of course, in the Congress and the Court of Public Opinion meant, yes, he did it.
Yeah.
And the guy, you could look at the guy. The guy looked like a monster for a while.
Yeah, you can't win really when you're busted like that. You got to sort of fess up, or it seems like now a lot of people they'll admit to it, but then have the little twist, that I was trying to get back from an injury or something, where they try to, twist it so there's a meritorious reason for their using the.
Yeah, actually, one of the current Dodgers was involved was named in the report, and I think it's the backup catcher, Mark Sweeney.
All right, I'll be sure to heckle him if I.
You'll have to. But most of the time it's going to be Russell Martin. Although Sweeney's been doing pretty decently hitting anyway, in spring training. I don't know if that's because of steroids or what, but he's doing okay.
I'm not sure. Now, my brother, he lives in San Diego. He went to a Dodgers game last year, and he's been raving about Dodger Stadium in Chavez Ravine ever since he went last year, so it must be some stadium.
Oh, it's a great stadium. It was built like we were discussing in the early 60s, so it's funny. It doesn't have any, really non-essential architectural elements in it. It's a pure baseball stadium. There's nothing in your way, no matter where you're sitting in the whole place. You've got a perfect view no matter where you sit, which you can't say that for a lot of ballparks, even some of the newer ones.
Yeah.
There are attempts to go retro and make things kind of, weird and quirky and all that. I think they take away from some of the views from different areas of the stadium. I mean, I know they still sell tickets right behind a pole in Fenway Park, don't they?
Yeah, Yeah.
People pay for those seats? I can't believe it.
Absolutely. I'm sure they pay a lot of money for it. Now,
yeah, and they come out of the game with a crick in their neck or a constant list to port or starboard for a while because they've been leaning over the whole game.
That's why they sell beer.
Exactly. Yeah, I really like the stadium. They keep trying to improve it, which means they're trying to make it so that they can make more money off it. But the fact remains that it was built for baseball. It's perfect for baseball, and it's probably one of the oldest. Being the early '60s, which doesn't seem that long ago, actually. In terms of baseball, it's one of the oldest stadiums left, with the exception of Fenway Park, Yankee Stadium, which is going out, and where do the Cubs play? Wrigley Field.
Yeah. Now, my brother said it's in almost like a suburban neighborhood or something like that. Is that accurate, or was he just crazy?
Well, I don't know what a suburb is in L.A. I mean, L.A. is just kind of a big sprawl.
I guess residential, maybe. That might be a better way to put it.
Yeah, it's a residential neighborhood. I mean, there's been a book or two written on the political and social elements surrounding putting that stadium there, because there was a whole community there that they just they either bought them out or threw them out or forced them out. Huh. And since they're all Hispanic people, they thought, who cares anyway, But that was what was going on then. That was a march of progress, and that's what O'Malley wanted, was the stadium there, and he made the deal, and people were moved out, and now there's still a residential neighborhood surrounding it with houses that were there before, way before Dodger Stadium was there. Some of them you can actually, a couple of them I think you can actually sort of see the field from the. No, you can't. No, I think they've kind of designed it so that the houses are all a little bit lower than the level of the playing field. I guess you could sit in Griffith Park somewhere and sort of watch the game if you had binoculars, but it'd be very difficult.
Yeah, just go home and watch it on TV at that point.
Yeah, but it is a beautiful stadium. I mean, I'm glad there's been some rumblings about building another stadium, and people are thinking, what? Why? This one works perfectly. It's been through 8 or 10 or 12 major earthquakes, and it's still there. There's no problem with it. It doesn't need to be retrofitted, and it's perfect. It's a perfect stadium for the Dodgers to play in. And I'm also happy. Even living now in this period where every stadium has some name of some team, every team stadium has a name of some company that bought the naming rights, that it's still actually Dodger Stadium. Mm-hmm. It's not Petco Park or Minute Maid Park, which actually used to Minute Maid. No, not Minute Maid. Who sponsored the? I think it was the Rangers. No, it's the Astros.
Oh, the Astrodome.
Yeah, well, it used to be the Astrodome, but now it's either Minute Maid Park or something like that. But it actually used to be Enron Field. That changed really quickly about 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it was when they first built it, it turned out to be a hitter's park, so people were calling it 10-run field.
Now, I know you go down to San Diego much. Have you been to the Petco there? Because I was there last year. I went to San Diego in the summer and actually got to see a game at Petco. It was pretty cool. It was different.
Yeah, I've been to Petco quite a few times. You know what? 4 or 5 times I've been there. 4 or 5 of the times I've been there, my dad works at a company down in San Diego, and they have one day every year where they go to a Padres game. And they buy out these seats that are right next to the Padres bullpen.
Yeah.
And what I was saying about and they're expensive seats. I mean, they're like bench seats, and they've got a buffet there, and as much beer and hot dogs and potato salads you can stuff down your gullet. But one cool thing about it is it's right in front of the bullpen for the Padres. The not cool thing about it is you can't see right field. So, because it's in the left field bullpen.
Yeah.
Then there's that big, there's a jumbotron in the middle of, or something in the middle of center. No, there's that big black wall so that batters can see the ball. But the thing is so damn high up above you to the left. It's like 10, 15, 20 feet to the left, up in the air. You see a ball heading towards left field, you look and it just kind of disappears, and you have to listen to see what happened. If you hear a huge cheer, you know the guy caught it.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Well, I guess it's time now for the predictions part of the show. I'm really excited about this. I'm going to have my predictions at the end of the show when I do the closeout, but we've gotten everybody so far, 4 people so far. You're the 5th one here on the list, and winner, of course, will get bragging rights next year on the baseball special. So are you ready for predictions?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
All right, that's all we ask. We'll start with your home country here, National League West. Who you got?
It's going to be between the Dodgers and the Padres, and I hate to say it, but I bet the Dodgers will take it.
All right. Why do you hate to say it? You don't want to jinx them?
1, I don't want to jinx them, and 2, I say that I automatically set myself up for disappointment if it doesn't happen. But yeah, those are, and the Diamondbacks look good too. But it's going to, I think, in the last couple months of the season, it's going to be a dogfight between the Diamondbacks, the Padres, and the Dodgers, and I believe the Dodgers will squeak through on the top.
All right. The National League Central, or as I joked with Richard Dolan, the National League Cellar.
A lot of people have a lot of hopes for the Cubs because of superstition. What is that? Years ending in 8, where they've done well.
Something like that. Well, it is the 100th anniversary too, so
yeah,
that going
exactly.
forward.
So another dogfight. Cubs and Astros, and I think the Astros will come out on top.
Wow, nice. All right, I like that. You're the first to call for the Astros, so
yeah,
you're cornering the market on that one. The National League East.
I'm trying to think of a team that stands out in the National League East. Probably Mets again.
Okay.
I'm going mostly on records here and vague ideas about personnel changes and trends. I'm not going on, heart and hope and then more importantly stats and specific players because I don't know them.
There you go. Well, Gorightly used the Costanza method where he picked opposite of who everyone else will pick. Least likely. So I think you'll enjoy his picks when you hear them.
So he thinks the Giants are going to win the NL West, huh?
Oh, he thinks they're going all the way, baby.
Oh, of course he does.
I feel bad for Adam. His team is so awful that it was like I was at a wake when we were doing the interview. It was like it's like polar opposites here with the Dodgers. Things are turning around so well for them. And the poor Giants are just wallowing in poor personnel decisions and all kinds of problems.
I keep telling him to change his affiliation and have more fun, but he won't. It's funny. I'll send him emails about something. I'll get a lot of 1 or 2 word expletive replies in the email.
Well, we really tapped into his Dodger hate in the interview, so you'll get a chance to hear.
Oh, okay. And I'm sure he said something about me too.
Just that whole mind control thing with the Dodgers.
Right.
I think he thinks you're behind the whole thing.
Yeah, well, see, that's not illegal yet.
Exactly. They're ahead of the game.
You know what? I don't get bitter. Baseball, Jesus, it's fun, but Christ.
All right, now the National League wild card. Who do you got?
Wow.
Yeah, this one's a tough one. There's 6 or 7 teams that could fill that spot.
You were saying something. You know what? I'll go completely out on a limb. You were saying something about Phillies.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put them in.
All right.
It's totally stupid and completely wrong, I'm sure, but let's use the Costanza method. Well, if you use the Costanza method, then you'd say Devil Race or something, but.
Or the Nationals. That's who.
The Nationals. Yeah, that's it.
But your pick is the Phillies.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. All right, now to the American League. The American League East, my stomping grounds.
Boston.
Nice. There you go. American League Central.
I don't know if Detroit's going to do anything. You think White Sox will come back? Ever since the World Series, they've been kind of, hanging around the top there, but not quite making it.
I think it's a 2-horse race between the Indians and the Tigers.
Indians haven't been there in quite a while. They used to be one of those, always there.
Yeah.
So I'll go with Indians.
The American League West.
Angels.
And the wild card.
American League wild card?
Yeah.
You know what? I'll stick that with Chicago.
All right. Chicago White Sox?
Mm-hmm.
All right. No playoffs for the Yankees. Nice. I like that.
No, I think they're going to continue to trend downward to the delight of everybody across the country. And yes, that is an emotional heart-based assessment.
That's fine. That's what I'm hoping for as well. I'm hoping for that as well. Now, who will face off in the World Series? Who you got as the American League champion and the National League champion?
I hate to say it, but I think it'll be Boston again.
Okay.
No, the only reason I hate to say it is I was so happy when they won it the first time, and the second time I was like, come on, don't turn these guys into the Yankees too. It's not anything against Boston. It's just that I'm so democratic about things that when somebody starts to dominate constantly, after a while I get tired of it. Everybody does.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it'll be Boston. You know what? Let's really screw up my emotional life for October and say Boston and L.A.
There you go. Nice. Kimball would like that.
And it would be a nice full circle thing because their spring training thing out here in over the next couple days.
Exactly. Yeah, it would be one of those things where it would be karmic.
Yeah, exactly. And let's see what happens. I'm sure I'm going to be completely wrong on just about all of those, except for I hope the last one.
And who you have winning it all? Who's your World Series champions for 2008?
You know, if it's between Boston, I should pick somebody else besides Boston and L.A. I'm going to keep my loyalty and say L.A.
All right. Sounds good.
Although I don't think they can do it.
Everyone will think you're a genius if you get this right.
Yeah, I know. I probably have the dumbest predictions of anybody because I don't pay too much attention to other teams except maybe their win-loss records and where they were in the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
the year before that.
Yeah, I'm a little weak on the National League, but I follow the American League as close as I can, pretty much.
Yeah, see, I'm exactly the opposite because Dodgers in the National League, so I'm aware of those teams and the players because I see them when they come into town.
Exactly. That's why I like having the special here with you and Gorightly. You're my National League representative, so it works out well.
Who did he think was going to win?
He has the Giants going all the way.
Oh, okay.
Over in the Costanza field, so.
Well, then I'm proud of him, and I'm glad he made those predictions.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to come true. They probably won't be any better than mine, but.
Giants over the Texas Rangers in the
Rangers, really?
Oh yeah, I told you, do the Costanza method. Wait till you see these picks; they're all over the map. They're great.
Has he got the Brewers in there somewhere?
No, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates will be.
Oh, okay, that's right, of course.
All right, well, I guess that concludes the baseball talk of the show. Before we wrap it up here, what's coming up for you, Greg? What do you have coming down the line? I know you're going to be at UFO Retro 3 and all kinds of other exciting stuff. So, plug away here. Yeah, the Retro Conference is the last weekend in April. I think it's the 28th and 29th. It is the 26th and 27th. Oh, 26th and 7th. Thank you. I'm going to speak at it. I don't even know. And Adam Gorightly speaking there, Chica Bruce, who I hardly ever see speaking anywhere that I know of, Ken Thomas, Nick Redfern, and then from we actually have an old-time contactee, Robert Short, who's still around and preaching the gospel of the Space Brothers, thank goodness. Adam's going to do some music along with the guitarist. I guess Adam's going to play his theremin. Yes, he was saying that. Yeah, I was actually playing the theremin, Adam's theremin, inside the Integratron last year, and the acoustics in there make it sound even weirder than it normally does. And there's going to be other music. There's Tim Cridlin, the Torture King, basically a guy that sticks pins and needles through his skin and his tongue and all that. He has a Vegas act, actually. Nice. That's how he makes his living, I think, apart from writing. He's going to be there. There's going to be a trip out to Giant Rock with Robert Short and possibly me, I'm not sure. And if the wind is right, I'm going to fly into the convention and scare everybody. Wow, nice. I'm going to hold you to that. The wind. People can find out more on that at retroufo.com. That's the website for it. So check that out and make your plans now, folks, because you're running out of time here, which I know. Yeah. You're up against the clock on getting to this thing. So if you want to check it out, definitely do so, because all the cool folks from Binnall of America Audio are going to be there, like you and Kimball and Gorightly and Nick Redfern. So it's like a party there. Obviously, people can check out UFO Mystic for all the great stuff from you and the awesome radio program, Radio Mysterioso. You've had some great episodes in the last few weeks. People can check all that stuff out, right, too? Yeah, definitely. Within about a week or two after I have a guest on, I usually put it up for podcast on radioforall.net. I'm looking for another server to host, or a system or somebody to host the podcast, because Radio for All is very unreliable. Yeah. You're preaching to the choir here. I use them too, and my podcast feeds, it's hit or miss. You never know if it's going to be up or down. You know why you use them? Because you asked me really early on. Yes, you're to blame. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the man responsible for the poor podcast. We finally got him on the show, and we can.
Yeah, well, when I find a better one, or you do, let's tell each other about it, and then we can move over to that one and have a lot more reliable resource for people that want to listen to them, because internet radio is not live radio, it's podcasting.
Exactly, yeah.
I like doing the shows live. I don't know why. I just really like that. I like being at a station with a bunch of controls and places I can play music and having somebody there on the phone and basically doing it live, whether people call in or not. I don't really mind. It's nice when they do. But, 99% of the listeners come through download.
Exactly.
Because people can't remember every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Pacific to listen to my show, but they can remember, here's somebody I missed, and they can go download that. And last week was Peter Robbins, and we only talked about UFOs in the last, 40 minutes. The rest of the time he was talking about his adventures in Afghanistan and India in the late 60s or in the early 70s.
Yeah, Peter's great. I'm hoping we can get him back on the show soon. He's just a storyteller of amazing proportions.
Yeah, exactly. And the next week, I'm going to have a show having nothing whatsoever to do with UFOs, which I've done once before when I talked to my flying instructor. One of the co-authors of Weird California is going to be on with me, Joe Osterly, who actually used to be a writer for National Lampoon when they went on the web.
Oh, nice.
Whatever you think of National Lampoon, he is, at least after about 1978 when they stopped being funny. He's been a stand-up comedian. He's acted in improv theater, and he makes at least part or maybe most of his living from being funny. So what we're going to do is go through the history of comedy and play a bunch of comedy records and discuss why they're funny and laugh about them and just the whole subject of humor and satire and what makes that attractive and why it's a necessary social lubricant or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That it's going to be 2 hours just on humor.
Nice. So it's like a baseball special of sorts. You got to go off topic sometimes. There's life outside of UFOs, folks. That's the point of this show. You just can't get all wrapped up in just UFOs and forget about the rest of the real world.
Right. Oh, the other thing is I'm speaking at the Roswell Conference again this year, too.
Nice. All right. I'm sure we'll hear more about that at UFO Mystic anyway, right?
Yes, as the time draws nearer, yes.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming back here on the baseball special. I really appreciate it. Like I said, people can find out more from UFO Mystic, and you post there about Radio Mysterioso so they can find out about the show there. And, of course, you're going to be at the UFO Retro Con 3, April 26th and April 27th at the world-famous Integratron in Landers, California, and find out about that at retroufo.com. Greg, like I said, I can't thank you enough. Second appearance here this season. I enjoy talking to you so much. Hopefully we can meet up soon this time for real this year sometime. If I'm not out there at the RetroCon, I'll be out in San Diego at some point. So hopefully our paths.
Tell me when you're coming down to San Diego, and I'll come down. We'll go catch a Padres game.
Sounds good to me. All right, thanks again. Take it easy.
Thank you, Tim.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
That does it for the second annual BoA Audio Baseball Special. Huge uber thanks to all 5 great guests who appeared on the program: Paul Kimball, Loren Coleman, Richard Dolan, Adam Gorightly, and Greg Bishop. Tremendous guys. Can't wait to talk to them in 2009 to kick off the baseball season and see how these predictions size up. Speaking of which, now I will reveal my picks. That way, we can all be on a fair playing field. Here we go. Here are my picks for the 2008 baseball season. American League East, the Boston Red Sox. American League Central, the Detroit Tigers. American League West, the Seattle Mariners. American League Wild Card, the New York Yankees. In the NL East, I have the New York Mets. In the National League Central, the Chicago Cubs. In the NL West, Arizona Diamondbacks. NL Wild Card, the LA Dodgers. And facing off in the World Series will be the Detroit Tigers and the Chicago Cubs. And my pick for the World Champions of 2008, I'm pulling a Kimball. I'm picking the Tigers, and I think they've got all of the necessary intangibles to go all the way this year, and I'm sticking by that prediction. We'll see who wins in November. It's a long way off, but we're going to put these predictions in the vault and dig them out in the beginning of November and see who has the baseball prognostication powers. I'm putting my money on Loren Coleman, to tell you the truth. I have a feeling Loren Coleman is going to score huge, and we're going to be stunned. Anyway, if you lasted this long, folks, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. Like I said at the beginning of the show, the baseball special is about one thing and one thing only. A lesson I learned over the course of the last year, definitely. You got to have other stuff going on. You can't just make the paranormal your life. It's all right to live within the world of the paranormal, but don't live it. Don't live of it, if you know what I mean. That's what life's all about, stopping, smelling the roses, and, saying, hey, wait a minute, this paranormal shit's been going on for a long time, so let's kick back and relax and talk a little bit about something else for a change. We're already way, way past 3 hours at this point, so we're going to blow off the BOA audio listener feedback. Want to throw in a plug, though, for the official BOA forum, the usofe.com, THEUSOFE.com, the usofe.com. Make it your hangout, make it your clubhouse. It's where we all hang out. It's the usofe.com, the official BOA forum. Check that out. Heading toward the close of the show here now. It is time for the thanks part of the program. You know them, you love them, you've heard of them every week here on the show. Soon you're going to be hearing from them. They are the infamous and outstanding BOA staff. Leslie, Chiron, R. Lee, Joe V, Tina Senna, and Rochelle Hawks. We say it week in and week out. If you're only listening to BOA audio and you're not checking out BOA on a 7-day basis, you are really missing out on some top-notch esoteric material. Binnallofamerica.com. Make it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. Donation time, donation time. This is the part of the show where I ask you to make donations. You know how to do it. You go to Binnallofamerica.com, you click the PayPal button, and you make a donation. 2-hour-long international calls, 5 interviews in one episode, hopefully down the line some trips to various conferences to do some on-site reporting. That's what BOA audio is all about. How do we keep this kind of standard up? Through donations from the folks who listen to the show. The program is free. We rely on your donations. We're like the Charlie Rose Show, only a little more esoteric, but we do need your donations. You heard me run down how to do it already. PayPal button at BOA. Click it, make a donation. No donation is too small, and all donations go towards keeping BOA free of charge for all of our great listeners and readers the world over. Next week on the program, it is going to be a very fascinating interview. I'm not even going to talk about it because it's not going to be taped till Friday, and you know how touch and go things are sometimes. This guy may not work out, you don't know. So, all I'm going to say is one word, and you can do your own research on this till we talk again next week. And that word is Rumspringa. That's it. That's all I got for you. Rumspringa. Next week on BOA. It's going to be a Rumspringa Festivus, and it's going to knock your socks off, I hope. And on that note, we don't have anything left to say. As I said earlier in the program, though, thank you so much for listening, folks. This was a long-ass episode, but in a lot of ways, it is in keeping with what the baseball special should be. It should be nearly baseball game length, which is what this thing turned out to be. It was the second annual BOA Audio Baseball Special. We'll be back next year for another celebration of America's pastime. And, of course, next week with more off-kilter esoteric audio. Come on back for that. Until then, this is Tim Binnall, thanking you for listening and signing off.